In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. It's a phrase etched into the consciousness of every Warhammer 40,000 enthusiast, a mantra that defines an entire universe. But war needs weapons, and in the 41st millennium, the instruments of death have evolved far beyond anything our modern minds can truly comprehend. These aren't just tools for killing, they're statements of philosophy, monuments to humanity's darkest ingenuity, and testaments to just how far civilization will go when survival is measured in the bodies of your enemies. Today, we're going to explore the most brutal weapons that exist in the Warhammer 40k universe. Not just the most powerful, though power certainly plays its part. Not just the most destructive, though we'll witness destruction on a scale that defies imagination. We're looking at weapons that are brutal in every sense of the word. Weapons that tear, burn, dissolve, and obliterate. Weapons that kill slowly, and those that kill instantaneously. Weapons that destroy bodies, and those that annihilate entire worlds. Weapons that have shaped 10,000 years of endless conflict. What makes a weapon truly brutal in the context of Warhammer 40k? Is it the raw damage it can inflict, the suffering it causes, the terror it inspires? In this universe, brutality is measured not just in death tolls, but in the manner of death itself. A lasgun might kill efficiently, but is it brutal? Perhaps not in the same way as a chainsword that tears through armor and flesh with spinning adamantium teeth. A missile might destroy a target completely, but does it inspire the same visceral horror as a melta gun reducing a human being to superheated vapor and charred bone fragments? The Imperium of Man, that galaxy-spanning civilization of 1 million worlds, has spent 10 millennia perfecting the art of killing. Every enemy they've faced, from the savage Orks to the ancient Necrons, from the insidious forces of chaos to the all-consuming Tyranid swarms, has taught them new lessons in death. And they've learned well. Too well, perhaps. The Imperium's arsenals contain weapons that date back to humanity's golden age, the mysterious dark age of technology, when human ingenuity reached heights that can no longer be replicated. They contain weapons perfected during the Great Crusade, when the Emperor of Mankind led his armies across the stars. And they contain weapons born in desperation during the Horus Heresy, when brother turned against brother and the galaxy burned. But the Imperium doesn't have a monopoly on brutality. The Chaos Space Marines wield corrupted versions of Imperial weapons, enhanced by demonic power and malevolent warp energies. The Eldar, those ancient xenos whose civilization once ruled the stars, possess weapons of such refined lethality that they can shred a target at the molecular level. The Orks, brutal and cunning in equal measure, create weapons that shouldn't work by any law of physics, but do so anyway, through sheer belief and daca. The Necrons, awakening from their 60 million year slumber, bring to bear weapons forged in the war in heaven, instruments of devastation that make even the Imperium's most powerful arsenal look primitive by comparison. In this exploration of Warhammer 40k's most brutal weapons, we'll examine both the personal and the apocalyptic. We'll start with the weapons that Space Marines carry into battle, the tools they use to enact the Emperor's will up close and personal. We'll discuss the weapons that scream through the void of space, mounted on warships and titans. And we'll finish with weapons so devastating that their use is reserved only for the most desperate circumstances. Weapons that don't just kill soldiers or destroy armies, but eradicate entire worlds and all life upon them. Each weapon tells a story. The bolter speaks of humanity's determination to fight enemies that outmatch them in every physical capacity. The chainsword represents the brutal close-quarters doctrine of Space Marine warfare. Plasma weapons embody the Imperium's tragic relationship with technology they no longer fully understand. Weapons so dangerous that they're as likely to kill their wielder as their target. Melta weapons demonstrate the raw, unapologetic application of force, solving problems through the application of fusion-level heat. And the weapons of Exterminatus, those planet killers that represent the Imperium's ultimate sanction, show us just how far humanity will go to prevent the spread of corruption, heresy, and xenos taint. Understanding these weapons isn't just about understanding the mechanics of how they work, though we'll certainly explore that. It's about understanding what they represent in the broader context of the Warhammer 40k universe. Every weapon is a piece of the puzzle that makes up this dark future, a reflection of the civilizations that created them and the wars they were designed to win. They're products of necessity, born from desperation, refined through 10,000 years of constant warfare. So prepare yourself for a journey through an arsenal of horror. We'll examine weapons that reduce targets to component atoms, weapons that cause such agony that death becomes a mercy, and weapons that make entire planets uninhabitable for millennia. We'll discuss the technology behind these instruments of death, the tactics employed in their use, and the price paid by those who wield them. We'll look at weapons that require no special training, and those that only the most elite warriors in the galaxy can master. We'll explore weapons of precision and weapons of wholesale slaughter. The weapons of Warhammer 40k aren't just about killing efficiently. They're about sending messages, about inspiring terror in your enemies and faith in your allies, about demonstrating the superiority of your civilization and the inevitability of your victory. In a universe where war is the only constant, where peace is measured in the brief moments between conflicts, weapons become more than tools. They become symbols, relics, objects of worship and fear in equal measure. As we delve into this catalogue of destruction, remember that in the grim darkness of the far future, these weapons aren't relics in museums or theoretical designs on drawing boards. They're being used right now on 1,000 battlefields across the galaxy. They're tearing through flesh and armor. They're reducing cities to rubble and armies to ash. They're writing history in blood and fire, one trigger pull at a time, the chainsword, icon of brutality. If there's one weapon that defines the brutal aesthetic of Warhammer 40,000, it's the chainsword. This weapon, more than any other, captures the essence of the setting's dark magnificence. It's a sword, that most ancient and noble of weapons, combined with a chainsaw, the brutal industrial tool. The result is something uniquely horrible and uniquely 40k. A weapon that doesn't just kill its enemies, but tears them apart in the most visceral way imaginable. The chainsword is essentially exactly what it sounds like, a sword-shaped weapon with motorized teeth that run along a single-edged blade, spinning at incredible speeds. But that simple description doesn't do justice to the engineering marvel and the horrific effectiveness of this weapon. These aren't the crude chainsaw blades you'd find in a lumber mill. The teeth of Imperial chainswords are made from an adamantium carbon alloy, ensuring they're hard enough to bite through even the toughest materials. Many versions use monomolecularly edged teeth, meaning each tooth is sharpened to a single molecule edge, allowing them to slice through materials at a nearly molecular level. The weapon makes an angry, buzzing sound as the teeth spin, a sound that intensifies into a high-pitched scream when they grind into armor or bone. This noise alone has a psychological effect on the battlefield. Enemies hear that distinctive whine building to a roar and know what's coming. It's the sound of impending dismemberment, of armor being chewed through, of bones being ground to splinters. For those who wield it, particularly the Adeptus Astartes Space Marines, it's the sound of righteous fury made manifest. Chainswords come in countless variants, each adapted to specific purposes or bearing the mark of different chapters and forges. The standard Astartes pattern chainsword is a one-handed weapon, typically around 1 meter in length, perfectly balanced for use alongside a bolt pistol or combat shield. But there are also two-handed variants. The Eviscerator, favored by the Ecclesiarchy's zealots and witch hunters, is an obscenely large two-handed chainsword that incorporates a crude disruption field generator similar to those found on power weapons. This combination makes it capable of ripping an armored man in half with a single stroke, or tearing open the hull plating of light vehicles. When an Eviscerator revs to full speed in the hands of a fanatical priest, it becomes an instrument of the Emperor's wrath that few enemies can withstand. The Space Wolves chapter has developed their own unique variant called the Frostblade. These weapons combine the tearing action of a chainsword with the armor-penetrating qualities of a power weapon. The teeth are cut from nearly unbreakable materials like ice-kraken fangs or tempered diamond, and the weapon is enveloped in a distinctive blue-hued power field. The Space Wolves' Iron Priests create each Frostblade as a masterwork, a weapon worthy of the chapter's greatest heroes. In the hands of a Space Wolf warrior, a Frostblade becomes an extension of Fenris itself, cold and merciless and utterly deadly. The Eldar, those ancient xenos who mastered psychoplastic materials and psychoconductive technology, have their own versions of chainswords used by their striking scorpion aspect warriors. These scorpion chainswords are elegant weapons compared to their Imperial counterparts, featuring psychoconductive triggers that activate the blade's motor with a mere thought. The teeth, which the Eldar call wormfang teeth, are designed with typical Eldar precision, refined over millions of years of warfare. While the Imperium views chainswords as brutal assault weapons, the Eldar treat them as surgical instruments, tools for precise dismemberment. Even the Orks have embraced chainsword technology, though calling their weapons technology might be generous. Ork choppers often take the form of massive smoke-belching chainswords cobbled together from scrap metal and salvaged parts. The teeth are blunter than their Imperial or Eldar counterparts, but are far thicker and capable of withstanding the enthusiastic abuse that Orks give to any weapon. These weapons vibrate so violently that wielding them feels like your very bones are shaking, but Orks see this as yet another benefit. To an Ork, a weapon that makes your whole body shake with barely contained violence is working exactly as intended. What makes the chainsword particularly brutal isn't just its ability to cut through armor and flesh, it's the manner in which it does so. A power sword might superheat the molecular bonds of a target and slice through cleanly. A combat knife makes precise surgical cuts, but a chainsword tears. It rips. It grinds. When a chainsword makes contact with flesh, the spinning teeth don't just cut. They catch, pull, and shred. Bone doesn't break cleanly under a chainsword's assault. It splinters and fragments, ground into pieces by the relentless action of the blade. Against armored targets, the effect is equally devastating if more mechanical in nature. The adamantium teeth bite into ceramite power armor or orc mega armor, finding purchase in microscopic imperfections. Once they've caught, they don't let go. They grind and chew, sending sparks and fragments of armor spinning away. The sound of a chainsword working through heavy armor is distinctive and terrible, a shriek of protesting metal mixed with the roar of the weapon's motor straining under the load. For the unfortunate soul inside that armor, there's often a few seconds of awful realization as they feel the weapon biting deeper, the vibrations transmitted through their armor before the teeth finally breach the inner layer and find flesh. The chainsword requires significant training to use effectively. Unlike a traditional sword, where the blade itself does the cutting, a chainsword's cutting power comes from the motor-driven teeth. This means the weapon needs to be held against the target for the teeth to do their work, making technique somewhat different from standard blade work. Space Marines train for years to master the proper angles of attack, the correct pressure to apply, and the timing needed to maximize the weapon's effectiveness. In the hands of an untrained user, a chainsword is dangerous. To the user, as much as to their enemies. The weapon can bind in heavy armor, catch on bones or materials at the wrong angle, or even kick back in unpredictable ways if not controlled properly. But in the hands of a Space Marine, particularly one of the assault specialists like the Blood Angels or Space Wolves, the chainsword becomes something transcendent. These warriors have devoted decades or even centuries to mastering close combat. They know instinctively how to angle the blade to maximize tearing, how to use the weapon's weight and momentum, how to keep the teeth cutting at optimal efficiency, even in the chaos of melee combat. Watch a veteran assault marine work through an enemy formation with a chainsword, and you're witnessing a master craftsman at work, painting in blood and torn flesh. The psychological impact of chainswords cannot be understated. Imagine facing a space marine charging toward you, a 7-foot-tall post-human warrior in powered ceramite armor, and in their hand is a roaring, screaming weapon whose sole purpose is to tear you apart. The sound alone would be enough to break lesser warriors. The sight of what a chainsword does to the warrior ahead of you in the line, the way it chews through their armor, the spray of blood and fragments, the awful wetness of the sound. That's the kind of thing that breaks morale entirely. Entire formations have routed at the sight of Space Marine assault squads, revving their chainswords and preparing to charge. The maintenance requirements for chainswords are significant. After each engagement, the teeth must be inspected for damage, the motor serviced, the drive chain checked for wear. Tech Marines and Tech Marines spend hours performing the proper rituals of maintenance, speaking the litanies of function to the weapon's machine spirit, anointing the moving parts with sacred oils. A well-maintained chainsword can serve for centuries, passed down from one battle brother to another, accumulating a history written in the notches on its casing and the kill markings etched into its housing. Some of the most ancient chainswords in Space Marine armories have served since the Great Crusade, weapons that have tasted the blood of enemies mankind hasn't fought in millennia. The chainsword's place in Warhammer 40k's iconography is well deserved. It represents the Imperium's approach to war in microcosm: brutal, unsubtle, effective, and utterly without mercy. It's a weapon that makes no pretense of elegance or civilization. Its purpose is to tear apart the Emperor's enemies, and it does so with relentless mechanical efficiency. When a Space Marine revs their chainsword and charges into battle, they're not just attacking, they're making a statement. They're showing the enemy exactly what awaits them. They're embodying the Imperium's doctrine of warfare, overwhelming force applied without hesitation or mercy. In the context of the most brutal weapons in 40k, the chainsword occupies a special place. It's not the most destructive weapon we'll discuss. It won't level cities or crack planets. But for sheer, visceral brutality, for the personal horror it inflicts, the chainsword is hard to match. It's a weapon that turns killing into a tactile physical act. The wielder feels every bite of the teeth, every judder as the blade chews through resistance. They see the effects up close and personal. There's no distance, no abstraction, just you, your enemy, and a roaring blade designed to tear them apart. The bolter, explosive fury. If the chainsword is the icon of 40k's melee brutality, then the bolter is undoubtedly the signature ranged weapon of the setting. Also called a bolt gun, this weapon has become synonymous with the Space Marines themselves, the weapon of choice for the Emperor's finest warriors. To understand why the bolter is so devastating, so brutal in its effectiveness, you need to understand what makes it different from conventional projectile weapons. A bolter doesn't fire bullets in any traditional sense. Instead, it fires mass-reactive bolts, self-propelled, gyro-stabilized, armor-piercing, explosive rounds that are closer to miniature missiles than to bullets. Each bolt is .75 caliber, roughly 19 millimeters in diameter, and consists of multiple precisely engineered components working in concert to deliver maximum lethality. Let's break down what happens when a bolter fires. First, there's the outer casing, a diamantine-tipped shell designed to penetrate armor. Behind that tip is a mass-reactive detonator cap, a sophisticated device that requires a sudden increase in local mass to trigger, specifically the kind of mass increase that happens when the round penetrates a target and suddenly encounters dense material like organs, muscles, or internal structures. Behind the detonator is the main explosive charge, usually a mixture designed to produce maximum expansion and fragmentation. At the core of the round sits a depleted deuterium core, providing weight and density to help the round maintain momentum and punch through armor. When you pull the trigger on a bolter, the propellant base ignites, launching the bolt from the weapon. Almost immediately, the round's rocket motor kicks in, accelerating it to supersonic velocities. The diamantine tip, harder than almost any material in the galaxy, punches through armor, biting deep. The gyro stabilizer keeps the round flying true, compensating for crosswinds, the natural instability of rocket-propelled projectiles, and other environmental factors. Then, once the round has penetrated its target, the mass-reactive detonator triggers. The main explosive charge detonates inside the target, turning the bolt into a grenade inside your enemy's torso, head, or limbs. The result is catastrophic. A human struck center mass by a bolter round doesn't just die, they explode. The round penetrates, detonates, and quite literally blows them apart from the inside. Limbs are severed, torsos burst open in sprays of blood, bone fragments, and liquefied organs. Even glancing hits are often fatal, as the explosive force pulps flesh and shatters bones. Against unarmored targets, bolters are almost comically overpowered, the kind of weapon that turns individual humans into rapidly expanding clouds of meat and blood. But bolters aren't designed to kill unarmored humans. They're designed to kill things that would laugh off conventional small arms fire. Orks in their crude but effective mega armor, Chaos Space Marines in their corrupted power armor, Tyranid warrior organisms with carapaces harder than tank armor, Necron warriors with living metal bodies. Against these threats, the bolter's design makes perfect sense. The diamantine tip punches through armor that would turn aside regular bullets. The rocket propulsion gives the round enough momentum to keep driving forward, even after penetrating multiple layers of protection. And the explosive detonation ensures that even if the target is tougher than human, even if they're a superhuman transhuman warrior with 2 hearts and 3 lungs and redundant organs, the damage is severe enough to put them down. The sound of bolter fire is distinctive and terrifying. It's not the sharp crack of a rifle or the staccato pop, pop, pop of automatic fire. It's a deep, throaty roar, the sound of rocket motors igniting in rapid succession, punctuated by the wet crump of explosions as the rounds find their targets. On the battlefield, the roar of massed bolter fire is unmistakable. It's the sound of Space Marines going to work, the hammering thunder of the Imperium's wrath made audible. Enemies, hearing that sound, know what's coming, and for many, that knowledge breaks their will to fight before the first round finds its mark. The Adeptus Mechanicus and the artificers of various Space Marine chapters have developed hundreds of different bolt ammunition types over the millennia, each designed for specific tactical situations. Hellfire rounds replace the explosive core with a vial of mutagenic acid and thousands of microscopic needles. On impact, the vial shatters, pumping acid directly into the target's body through the needle punctures. These rounds were specifically developed to fight Tyranids, whose regenerative abilities and redundant biology make them difficult to kill with conventional explosives. The acid eats through flesh and bone, dissolving the target from the inside out, regardless of how many hearts or lungs they possess. Kraken rounds trade some explosive power for even greater penetration. They feature longer, more aerodynamic tips and enhanced rocket motors, allowing them to punch through the heaviest armor. When you absolutely need to kill something in Terminator armor or breach the hull of a light vehicle, Kraken rounds are the answer. Dragonfire rounds release a gout of superheated gas on impact, gas that seeps into cover and around corners, cooking anyone hiding behind what they thought was adequate protection. Metal Storm frag rounds replace the standard explosive core with a cluster of micro-explosives and shrapnel, turning each bolt into a kind of miniature cluster bomb, effective against massed infantry. Vengeance rounds are particularly interesting from a historical perspective. They were developed specifically to combat traitor Space Marines during the Horus Heresy, designed to breach the ceramite power armor of Astartes. The technology used in these rounds was considered so dangerous and unstable that it was almost abandoned, but the need to kill brother Space Marines efficiently was too great. Vengeance rounds used an unstable flux technology that made them somewhat hazardous to the firer, but devastatingly effective against power-armored targets. They were first deployed openly at the drop site massacre on Istvan V, where they proved horribly effective at killing loyalist space marines. The standard Astartes pattern bolter, the most common variant, is a formidable weapon that would be nearly impossible for an unaugmented human to use effectively. The recoil from firing rocket-propelled explosive rounds is immense, enough to dislocate or break the bones of anyone without the enhanced strength and skeletal reinforcement of a space marine. The weapon itself weighs significantly more than modern military rifles, and the ammunition is both heavy and bulky. A space marine in power armor can handle this weight easily, their enhanced muscles and the servo motors in their armor making the bolter feel like a natural extension of their body. For anyone else, trying to use a bolter is an exercise in futility at best and suicide at worst. The heavy bolter takes the concept of the standard bolter and supersizes it. Firing 1.00 caliber rounds, essentially 25mm explosive rockets, the heavy bolter is a crew-served weapon when wielded by normal humans, requiring a two-man team to move, set up, and operate effectively. For Space Marines, it's a heavy weapon certainly, but one that a single warrior can carry and fire, especially when mounted on a suspensor to help manage the weight. The heavy bolter has a much higher rate of fire than the standard bolter, capable of putting out hundreds of rounds per minute, creating a continuous stream of explosive death that can chew through infantry formations and light vehicles with contemptuous ease. The psychological impact of facing bolter fire cannot be overstated. Imagine being an enemy soldier watching the warrior next to you literally explode, their body torn apart from the inside by a mass reactive round. Now imagine that happening to every third or fourth person in your formation, a continuous series of wet explosions as bolter rounds find their targets. The survivors don't just face death, they face the very real possibility of being blown to pieces, of experiencing a brief moment of agony before explosive detonation ends their existence. This is warfare designed not just to kill, but to terrify, to break the enemy's will as effectively as it breaks their bodies. Bolters require constant maintenance and care. The complex rocket motors in each round, the precision engineering of the magazine feed system, the barrel that must withstand repeated rocket exhausts, all of these components need regular servicing. Tech Marines perform the rites of maintenance with religious devotion, speaking the litanies to awaken and placate the weapon's machine spirit, anointing each part with sacred oils, checking each component for wear or damage. A bolter that is not properly maintained will jam at critical moments, or worse, experience a catastrophic malfunction that can kill the user when a round detonates in the chamber. In terms of sheer versatility, few weapons in the 40k universe can match the bolter. It's effective against infantry, against light vehicles, against moderate cover. It can be used to breach doors and walls. It can suppress enemy positions or deliver precise shots at range. The variety of special ammunition available means a skilled Space Marine can adapt their bolter to almost any tactical situation. Need to kill a psyker? Load psycannon bolts that disrupt warp connections. Fighting in an urban environment. Dragonfire rounds clear buildings. Facing armored opponents. Switch to vengeance or Kraken rounds. The bolter's place in the Imperium's military doctrine goes beyond its practical effectiveness. For a Space Marine, the bolter is more than just a weapon. It's a symbol of their position as the Emperor's chosen warriors, a physical manifestation of humanity's supremacy over the xenos threats that surround it. To a Space Marine, the bolt gun is a treasured weapon, often serving the same warrior for centuries, accumulating a history and a reverence that transcends its material nature. Some of the most ancient bolters in Space Marine armories are relic weapons, used by legendary heroes, their kill counts measured in the thousands or tens of thousands. When we discuss the most brutal weapons in Warhammer 40k, the bolter demands inclusion, not because it's the most powerful or the most destructive, but because of the way it kills. It doesn't incinerate targets to ash, leaving nothing behind. It doesn't disintegrate them at a molecular level. Instead, it blows them apart in the most visceral, physical way imaginable. The aftermath of a bolter firefight is a charnel house of torn bodies, scattered limbs, and blood-slicked corridors. It's brutal, effective, and utterly without mercy. Exactly what the Imperium needs in an endless war against enemies that outnumber humanity billions to one. Power weapons, energy, and death in the arsenal of the Imperium's elite warriors. Few weapons command as much respect and fear as power weapons. These sophisticated implements of destruction harness barely understood energy field technology to create blades and striking surfaces that can cut through almost anything. While the chainsword tears and the bolter explodes, power weapons do something arguably even more frightening. They disrupt matter at a fundamental level, slicing through the molecular bonds that hold objects together. The core technology behind all power weapons is the disruption field, sometimes called a power field. This field surrounds the weapon's striking surface, typically created by a compact generator built into the weapon's hilt or handle. When activated, this field doesn't simply heat the blade or add cutting force. Instead, it weakens the molecular bonds of whatever it touches, causing materials to lose their structural integrity at the point of contact. The result is a weapon that can cut through ceramite armor, adamantium plating, and reinforced structures as easily as a regular knife cuts through water. The power sword is perhaps the most iconic of these weapons. To the untrained eye, a deactivated power sword might look like an ornate but otherwise normal sword, a weapon more suited to ceremony than combat. But when activated, the blade becomes wreathed in a corona of disruptive energy, often appearing as a faint blue or white glow along its length. This glow isn't just for show. It's visible evidence of the molecular disruption field doing its work, the air itself ionizing in the presence of such focused, destructive energy. When a power sword strikes an enemy, the results are devastating. The blade doesn't saw or hack like a chainsword. Instead, it passes through the target with almost no resistance, the disruption field parting armor, flesh and bone like they were no more substantial than morning mist. A skilled swordsman wielding a power sword can cut an armored opponent in half with a single stroke, the blade passing through their body so cleanly that there's a moment of confusion before the target realizes they've been bisected. Against unarmored foes, death comes even faster. A touch is often sufficient, the disruption field causing catastrophic tissue damage that sends the target into shock, even if the wound itself isn't immediately fatal. Power axes combine the disruption field with the mechanical advantage of the axe's design, concentrating force at a single point. Where a power sword relies on the slash and thrust, a power axe delivers devastating chops and overhead strikes that can split power-armored space marines from crown to groin. The momentum of the swing combined with the matter-disrupting properties of the field creates impacts that very few enemies can withstand. Ork warbosses in their mega armor, chaos champions blessed by dark gods, Tyranid biotitans, all have fallen to well-placed strikes from power axes. The Power Fist represents a different approach to the same technology. Rather than creating a blade or edge, the Power Fist encases the user's entire hand in an oversized armored gauntlet wreathed in a disruption field. When a Space Marine throws a punch while wearing a Power Fist, they're delivering not just their enhanced strength and the servomotor-assisted force of their power armor, but also the devastating effects of the disruption field. The result is impacts that can cave in armored vehicle hulls, shatter reinforced bunkers, and reduce enemy warriors to pulped meat inside crushed armor. Combat with a Power Fist is brutal and direct. There's no finesse, no fancy blade work. You grab your enemy and crush them, your fist tearing through their armor and the flesh beneath as easily as it passes through empty air. Or you punch, each strike landing with the force of a small explosive, sending enemies flying back with their armor crumpled and their bones turned to powder. The psychological effect of facing an enemy with a power fist is considerable. Knowing that even a glancing blow will likely be fatal, that armor offers little protection. That there's nowhere to hide from an opponent who can literally tear through walls to reach you. Thunderhammers take the concept of the power fist and marry it with the devastating impact force of a warhammer. But unlike standard power weapons, where the disruption field is constantly active, a thunderhammer builds up an immense charge that releases all at once upon impact. The name comes from the thunderous noise the weapon makes when it strikes, a crack like lightning hitting the ground that can be heard across a battlefield. The force released is enough to knock over the wielder themselves unless they're heavily armored and properly braced. When a thunderhammer strikes, it doesn't just disrupt molecular bonds. The stored energy is released in a massive shockwave that propagates through the target and everything around it. This makes thunderhammers particularly effective against large targets and vehicles. Hit a tank with a thunderhammer and the shockwave travels through the armor plating, buckling metal, cracking welds, and scrambling the crew inside, even if the armor itself holds. Hit a Tyranid carnifex with a thunderhammer and the impact breaks bones, ruptures organs, and sends the creature stumbling back, stunned and disoriented. Lightning claws represent yet another variation on power weapon technology. Worn as gauntlets, lightning claws extend a trio of power field wreathed blades above the wrist, typically each blade between 30 and 45 centimeters long. The result is a weapon that turns the user's hands into killing instruments, allowing for rapid slashing attacks that can tear through enemies with brutal efficiency. Lightning claws are often used in pairs, giving the wielder an almost supernatural offensive capability, their hands becoming a blur of energy-wreathed blades that shred anything in reach. Combat with lightning claws is extraordinarily lethal. Each strike has the potential to disembowel, decapitate, or dismember. A warrior skilled in their use can cut through multiple enemies in seconds, their claws flashing out in a deadly dance that leaves carnage in its wake. The weapon's design allows for both powerful strikes and lightning-fast attacks, making them ideal for the aggressive combat style favored by assault-oriented Space Marine chapters like the Blood Angels and their successor chapters. The Crozius Arcanum deserves special mention as both a symbol of office and a deadly weapon. Carried by Space Marine chaplains, these staff-like weapons incorporate power field generators into their distinctive skull-faced heads. A Crozius in the hands of a chaplain becomes an instrument of the Emperor's judgment, smashing through heretics and xenos with sanctified fury. The weapon's power field is often further enhanced by the chaplain's own psychic abilities, if they possess them, channeling righteous wrath into each strike. What makes power weapons particularly brutal in the context of 40k warfare isn't just their ability to cut through virtually anything, it's the certainty they provide. When a chainsword strikes, there's a chance the blade might bind in heavy armor. When a bolter fires, there's a chance the round might fail to penetrate. But when a power sword connects cleanly, when a power fist lands a solid blow, there's no uncertainty. The disruption field does its work, matter comes apart, and the target dies or is catastrophically damaged. This reliability makes power weapons the choice of champions, the weapons given to those who absolutely cannot afford to have their strikes fail. The maintenance and care required for power weapons is intensive and ritualistic. The power field generator is a complex piece of technology that the Imperium no longer fully understands. When a power weapon malfunctions, repairs often require the attention of master artificers or tech priests who have devoted decades to studying these ancient devices. The machine spirit of a power weapon must be properly placated with the correct litanies and rituals, or it may fail at a critical moment. Many power weapons are irreplaceable relics, their technology dating back to the Great Crusade or even the Dark Age of technology. The sound of power weapons in combat is distinctive, a crackling hum as the disruption field interacts with the air, rising to a sharp whine when the weapon strikes solid matter, followed by the sick, wet sound of whatever resistance there was giving way. On a battlefield filled with the roar of bolters and the screaming of chainswords, the humming crackle of power weapons stands out, a harbinger of precision death amid the chaos. Power weapons represent a fascinating aspect of 40k's brutal arsenal because they demonstrate that sometimes the most devastating approach isn't the most crude or straightforward. Yes, you could hack at an enemy with a conventional blade, relying on strength and momentum. Or you could undermine the very structure of matter itself, turning armor and flesh into substances no more resistant than air. The latter approach, while technologically sophisticated, is no less brutal in its effects. The enemy still dies in agony, their body failing in catastrophic ways as molecular bonds dissolve and tissues lose cohesion. In the hands of a space marine, particularly one who has trained for decades or centuries in their use, power weapons become extensions of the warrior's will, instruments through which the Emperor's judgment is delivered with absolute certainty. Each strike is potentially fatal. Each blow lands with the weight of 10 millennia of military tradition behind it. And each enemy that falls to a power weapon does so knowing that they faced one of the most perfect killing implements humanity has ever devised, a weapon that represents both technological sophistication and uncompromising brutality in equal measure. Plasma weapons, miniature suns. If power weapons represent the Imperium's technological sophistication, then plasma weapons represent its hubris, its desperation, and its increasingly tenuous grasp on the scientific knowledge that once made humanity the masters of the galaxy. Plasma weapons fire bolts of superheated matter in a state somewhere between gas and energy, achieving temperatures comparable to those found in the hearts of stars. They are devastatingly effective against nearly any target. They are also astoundingly dangerous to anyone wielding them, earning them a reputation as weapons that kill their users nearly as often as they kill the enemy. To understand plasma weapons, you need to understand what plasma actually is. It's the fourth state of matter, beyond solid, liquid, and gas. When you heat gas to extreme temperatures, we're talking tens of thousands of degrees, the electrons separate from their atoms, creating a superheated soup of ions and free electrons that behaves in ways that defy normal physics. This plasma can be contained and directed by powerful electromagnetic fields, and when released, it carries enough thermal energy to vaporize nearly anything it touches. Imperial plasma weapons work by taking hydrogen fuel, usually suspended in a liquid state in flasks or backpack containers, and feeding it into a miniature fusion core inside the weapon. The hydrogen energizes into plasma, held in containment by electromagnetic fields generated by the weapon's power supply. When the trigger is pulled, these fields dilate open and the plasma is ejected via a linear magnetic accelerator as a bolt of incandescent death. The bolt impacts the target and releases all its thermal energy at once, creating an effect similar to being hit by a small sun. The plasma gun is the most common infantry-carried plasma weapon in the Imperium. When it fires, the bolt appears as a blue-white streak of blinding light that leaves after images in the eyes of anyone who sees it. The impact is catastrophic. Organic matter doesn't just burn, it vaporizes instantly, turned to superheated gas and ash in a fraction of a second. Armor melts, stone slagged, metal runs like water. A direct hit from a plasma gun turns even heavily armored targets into charred, melted wreckage. But here's where plasma weapons earn their fearsome reputation among those who carry them. They're extraordinarily prone to overheating. The amount of heat generated by the plasma core is immense, and while the weapon is designed with cooling ducts and heat exchangers, continuous firing inevitably builds up thermal energy faster than it can be dissipated. When a plasma weapon reaches critical temperatures, it has to vent that excess heat somehow, or the magnetic containment fields will fail and the plasma will explosively decompress inside the weapon itself. In the best-case scenario, when a plasma weapon overheats, It vents emergency cooling in a cloud of superheated steam and plasma that cooks the wielder alive. Unarmored users are essentially guaranteed to die, their flesh flash-boiled off their bones. Space Marines in power armor have some protection, the ceramite plates and environmental seals of their armor providing insulation against the worst of the heat, but even they can be severely injured. Limbs can be permanently damaged, the nerve damage and tissue destruction requiring extensive augmentation to repair. In the worst-case scenario, the weapon doesn't vent at all. The magnetic containment fails completely, and the plasma core explosively decompresses in the wielder's hands. The weapon turns into a miniature sun for a brief, terrible moment, releasing all the thermal energy it was holding at once. The user is instantly vaporized along with anyone standing too close. Even Space Marines in full power armor rarely survive such a catastrophic failure. The heat is simply too intense, the energy release too violent. All that's left is a charred crater and maybe some melted fragments of armor. This makes plasma weapons a terrifying choice for Imperial Guard troops and other non-augmented humans. You're trusting your life to technology that the Imperium no longer fully understands, using weapons that were considered temperamental even during the Golden Age when humanity knew how they worked. Every time you pull the trigger on a plasma gun, there's a chance, small but real, that you're choosing to immolate yourself. This knowledge weighs heavily on those assigned to carry plasma weapons, creating a psychological burden that adds to the physical danger. The plasma pistol is a more compact version of the plasma gun, small enough to be carried as a sidearm. It's preferred by officers and elite warriors who need a weapon that can deal with heavily armored threats at close range. However, miniaturizing plasma technology makes it even more unstable. The smaller containment fields are more likely to fail. The reduced thermal capacity means overheating happens faster, and the proximity of the weapon to the user's body when it's holstered means catastrophic failures are even more deadly. Despite these risks, plasma pistols remain in use because sometimes you need to be able to blow a hole through a tank at point-blank range, and a plasma pistol will do that where a bolt pistol won't. The plasma cannon represents the heavy weapon version of this technology. Typically crew-served or mounted on vehicles, plasma cannons fire larger bolts of plasma at a higher rate than infantry weapons. The increased size allows for better heat management and more robust containment fields, making them somewhat more reliable than their smaller cousins. Somewhat. They still overheat with alarming regularity, and when a plasma cannon suffers a catastrophic failure, everyone in the immediate vicinity pays the price. The history of plasma weapons in the Imperium tells its own story about humanity's declining technical capabilities. During the Great Crusade, plasma weapons were at a dangerous phase in their development, powerful but prone to catastrophic failure. By the time of the Horus Heresy, the tech priests of Mars had developed a solution. They slowed the recharge cycle of the weapons, which maintained the integrity of the magnetic containment fields and reduced overheating. The new plasma weapons were much safer, but fired more slowly, reducing their combat effectiveness. Space Marine commanders weren't happy with this compromise, but the alternative was having too many of their warriors blown up by their own weapons. The old-style, more dangerous plasma weapons were declared Fabris Excommunicata, engines of destruction that had fallen from the approval of the machine god. Within a few centuries, they had disappeared from Imperial arsenals entirely. But the Chaos Space Marines, those traitors who fled into the Eye of Terror, kept using the old patterns. To this day, Chaos plasma weapons are more powerful than their Imperial counterparts, capable of firing multiple shots in the time it takes an Imperial weapon to fire once. They're also more likely to explode, but Chaos Marines seem to consider this an acceptable trade-off. Different Forge worlds produce different patterns of plasma weapons, each with their own quirks and characteristics. The Mk2 Ragefire pattern, common among Space Marine chapters, is considered relatively reliable by plasma weapon standards. The Mark I Apollo pattern, favored by fire-oriented chapters like the Salamanders, burns hotter than standard plasma weapons, creating a molten lava effect that's devastatingly effective but overheats even faster than normal. The phased plasma rifle, manufactured only for the Crimson Guard, does away with many of the drawbacks of Imperial plasma weaponry, rarely requiring recharging and producing much less excess heat. But the tech priests guard the secrets of its manufacture jealously, refusing to adapt the technology for wider use. Loading and unloading plasma weapons is itself a hazardous task. The hydrogen flasks that fuel them must be attached with the correct prayers and rituals, their unstable contents prone to spilling or fouling the plasma intakes if handled improperly. An incorrectly attached flask can cause the weapon to explode on the first shot, as an improperly filled magnetic chamber creates inescapable pressure that tears the weapon apart. Removing a flask is equally dangerous. Even a small leak of plasma can burn away a hand or cost a soldier several fingers. For these reasons, only tech marines or tech priests with extensive training typically handle the loading and unloading of plasma weapons in the field. The psychological dimension of wielding a plasma weapon adds another layer to its brutality. Imagine being an Imperial Guard plasma gunner. You're already facing enemies that would give seasoned warriors nightmares: Chaos Space Marines, Tyranid warrior organisms, Necron warriors. You're armed with a weapon that, yes, can destroy those threats, but might also immolate you at any moment. Every time you pull the trigger, especially in extended engagements where the weapon is already running hot, you're gambling with your life. That knowledge, that constant low-level fear of your own weapon, adds a psychological burden to an already stressful combat situation. Yet despite all these dangers, plasma weapons remain in the Imperial arsenal because sometimes you absolutely need the ability to punch through heavy armor or obliterate a high-value target, and plasma weapons deliver that capability more effectively than almost anything else of comparable size. A plasma gun can drop a Chaos Space Marine in Terminator armor with a single shot, can punch through the carapace of a Tyranid Carnifex, can reduce a light vehicle to slag. When you absolutely need something dead right now, and conventional weapons won't do it, you accept the risks that come with plasma. The Eldar, with their vastly superior understanding of technology, have developed plasma weapons that don't suffer from overheating issues. Their star cannons and similar weapons use sophisticated containment fields that keep the weapon's exterior cool to the touch, even while generating heat comparable to the core of a star. To the Imperium, this is yet another example of how far humanity has fallen, that the xenos can safely wield technology that kills Imperial soldiers with horrifying regularity. Plasma weapons represent a unique kind of brutality in the 40k arsenal. They don't just kill the enemy, they remind the user every time they fire of humanity's fall from grace, of the prices paid for using technology no longer fully understood, the flash of blue-white light, the smell of ozone and vaporized flesh, the ever-present risk of catastrophic failure. These combine to make plasma weapons as psychologically brutal as they are physically devastating. They're weapons that demand respect and inspire fear in equal measure, instruments of destruction that will kill your enemies without question, but might take you with them in the process. Melta weapons. Heat. Beyond measure. If plasma weapons represent barely controlled fusion reactions, then melta weapons represent fusion reactions that aren't controlled at all. They're simply aimed at the enemy and released. These are weapons that produce beams of thermal energy so intense that they make plasma look tepid by comparison. We're talking about heat measured not in thousands of degrees, but in the hundreds of thousands, or even millions. Heat sufficient to vaporize anything instantly, to reduce the toughest armor to pools of molten slag, to turn living creatures into superheated gas before they even have time to register pain. Melta weapons, also called fusion guns, melters, or cookers, work through a principle that sounds deceptively simple. They induce a submolecular reaction in highly pressurized pyrum petrol fuel, creating a fusion reaction that's then projected as a beam of incredible thermal energy. That description doesn't capture the sheer violence of the process or the devastating effect of being hit by the resulting beam. When a melta gun fires, there's a distinctive hissing sound as the beam superheats the air in its path, boiling away moisture and creating a partial vacuum. This is followed by a roaring blast as the beam strikes its target, the sound of matter being explosively converted from solid to liquid to gas in an instant. Organic tissue doesn't burn, it vaporizes, turned to superheated steam and ash faster than nerve signals can travel. Armor doesn't just melt, it liquefies and sloughs away, running like water off the superheated target beneath. The effective range of melta weapons is short, typically measured in meters rather than hundreds of meters like bolters or plasma weapons. But this short range is actually a feature, not a bug. Melta beams are most effective at close range, where the thermal energy is most concentrated. Get within a few meters of a target and a melta beam will bore straight through the thickest armor like it isn't there. The heat is so intense that it not only melts through the outer layers, but continues to propagate through the interior, cooking crew members inside vehicles, detonating ammunition in magazines, igniting fuel tanks. The multi-melta is the heavy weapon version, usually, featuring 2 melta beam projectors firing in synchronization to create a single, reinforced thermal lance. While still short-ranged compared to other heavy weapons, a multi-melta has the distinction of being able to melt through virtually anything. Tank armor, melted. Reinforced bunkers, reduced to slag. Tyranid biotitans, cooked from the inside out. When you absolutely, positively need to destroy something armored, and you can get close enough to use it, few weapons are as effective as a multi-melta. The Inferno pistol represents the pinnacle of melta technology. A handheld weapon small enough to use as a sidearm that contains all the destructive power of a full melta gun. The secrets of miniaturizing melta technology to this degree are all but lost to the Imperium, making Inferno pistols extraordinarily rare and valuable. They're typically carried only by the highest-ranking members of the Inquisition, the Adepta Sororitas, and certain Space Marine officers. Lord Commander Dante of the Blood Angels is famous for wielding an Inferno pistol, and watching him use it is a lesson in controlled devastation. Single shots that erase enemy champions from existence, leaving nothing but cooling pools of liquefied metal and armor. The tactical application of melta weapons is straightforward. You get close, you aim at the most critical point, and you fire. The beam does the rest. Against vehicles, this often means targeting weak points in armor, vision slits, engine compartments, ammunition storage areas. The beauty of melta weapons is that they don't really need to hit weak points. They create weak points. Apply enough fusion-level heat to any substance, and it stops being solid. Apply it long enough, and it stops being liquid. The target simply ceases to exist in any meaningful way. Against infantry, melta weapons are almost comically overpowered, though comically is perhaps the wrong word when we're discussing weapons that vaporize human beings. An unarmored human hit by a melta beam simply disappears in a flash of superheated gas and ash. Even Space Marines in full power armor can be killed by near misses, the radiant heat alone sufficient to cook them inside their suits if they're close enough. The only real protection against melta weapons is not being hit by them in the first place. One of the interesting aspects of melta weapons is their reliability compared to plasma weapons. While both fire devastating beams of thermal energy, melta weapons are significantly less prone to catastrophic failure. They don't have the same complicated magnetic containment issues that plague plasma weapons. They don't overheat in the same way. They simply work consistently and reliably, which makes them preferred anti-armor weapons for many Imperial forces, despite their extremely short effective range. The sound profile of melta weapons on the battlefield is distinctive and terrifying. The initial hiss-roar as the beam fires, the explosive vaporization of whatever gets hit, sometimes followed by secondary explosions as ammunition or fuel in the target detonates from the heat. Enemy tank crews can sometimes hear that distinctive sound just before their vehicle turns into an oven around them, giving them perhaps a second to realize they're about to die before the heat wave hits. Chaos Space Marine forces use larger, more powerful versions of melta weapons, heavier patterns that date back to the Horus Heresy, These weapons fire beams that are even more intense than their Imperial equivalents, capable of melting through heavier armor at slightly longer ranges. Like with plasma weapons, the traitor legions retain technology that the Imperium has since lost or degraded, giving them a slight edge in raw destructive power at the cost of using 10,000-year-old weapons that are increasingly difficult to maintain. The Eldar have their own melta-type weapons, though they call them fusion blasters and fusion pistols. Like most Eldar technology, these are more elegant and refined than their Imperial counterparts, with better range and more focused beams. The Eldar don't make crude weapons. Even their tools of destruction are works of art, sleek and efficient. But they kill just as effectively, reducing targets to pools of molten matter with typical Eldar precision. The Tau Empire has also developed fusion weapons, their fusion blasters serving roles similar to Imperial melta guns. Tau fusion weapons benefit from the race's superior understanding of plasma and fusion technology, giving them longer effective ranges than Imperial equivalents. A Tau fusion blaster on a battlesuit can engage targets at ranges where an Imperial melta gun would be ineffective, though still far shorter than most other Tau weapons. The aftermath of melta weapon usage is particularly gruesome in a setting already notorious for battlefield carnage. Bodies aren't just dead, they're partially vaporized. The moisture in their tissues explosively converted to steam that literally blows them apart from the inside. Armor is melted and fused, sometimes with the remains of the wearer still inside, cooked and partial vaporized. Vehicles become tombs of molten metal and charred crew. The smell, superheated metal, vaporized flesh, ozone from the superheated air, is unique and nauseating. For the unfortunate souls on the receiving end of melta fire, death comes either instantly or with brief, excruciating awareness. If you're hit center mass by the beam, you're vaporized before your nervous system can register what happened. If you're at the edge of the beam's effect, you might have a fraction of a second to feel your flesh flash boiling, your armor melting against your skin before shock and death take you. It's a horrific way to die, even by 40k standards. The tactical doctrine around melta weapons is necessarily aggressive. Their short range means you have to close with the enemy to use them effectively, often putting yourself in danger from their return. Fire. This makes melta weapons the domain of specialized close assault units, warriors who are willing to charge forward into danger to get within that critical range where their weapons become unstoppable. Sternguard veteran squads, Sisters of Battle Dominion squads, Assault Space Marine units. These are the troops who carry melta weapons into battle, knowing that their destructive power comes at the price of having to get dangerously close to the enemy. Melta weapons occupy an interesting position in the spectrum of 40k's brutal arsenal. They're not as versatile as bolters, not as long-ranged as plasma weapons, but for sheer single-target destructive power at close range, they're unmatched. When you absolutely need to destroy something armored, and you can get close enough to make the shot, nothing else compares. The beam of fusion-level heat doesn't ask questions, doesn't care about armor thickness or target toughness, or regenerative abilities. It simply applies more heat than anything can withstand, and reduces the problem to its constituent atoms, usually in the form of superheated gas. The brutality of melta weapons comes not from complexity, but from raw, overwhelming force. They don't tear like chainswords, or explode like bolters, or disrupt matter like power weapons. They simply apply so much thermal energy to a target that the target stops existing in any meaningful way. It's death by fundamental physics, unavoidable and absolute. And in a universe filled with exotic threats and enemies that can survive almost anything, sometimes the best solution is to apply heat until the enemy stops being a solid object. Flamers and incendiary horror fire has been a weapon of war for as long as there's been war. From the Greek fire of antiquity to modern incendiary munitions, humanity has recognized the terrible effectiveness of burning your enemies alive. In the 41st millennium, flamer weapons represent this ancient tradition refined to a horrifying degree of efficiency. These aren't just weapons that set things on fire. They're weapons that transform entire battlefield sections into infernos, that turn living beings into human torches screaming their last moments away, that make a mockery of cover and concealment. Imperial flamers project a stream of promethium, a highly flammable chemical fuel that ignites on contact with oxygen. But promethium isn't just gasoline or napalm. It's a super adhesive, gel-like substance specifically engineered to stick to whatever it touches and burn at extraordinary temperatures. When promethium touches flesh, it doesn't just burn the surface. It clings and continues burning, eating through tissue layer by layer, causing agonizing damage that continues long after the initial application. When it hits armor, it finds seams and joints, flowing into gaps where it continues to burn, cooking the wearer inside their protective shell. The standard Imperial flamer has a relatively short effective range, typically around 30 meters, but within that range, it's devastatingly effective. Unlike most projectile weapons that require aim and precision, flamers work by simply pointing in the general direction of the enemy and pulling the trigger. The weapon projects a cone of burning promethium that engulfs everything in its path. Infantry in cover find that cover meaningless as liquid fire flows around their protection. Enemies in trenches discover that flamers are purpose-built to clear such positions, the burning fuel flowing down into their defensive positions and turning them into ovens. The psychological impact of flamers is enormous, perhaps greater than any other infantry weapon in the Imperial arsenal. There's something primal about fire, something that reaches past rational thought and military training to trigger instinctive terror. Watching comrades turned into human torches, hearing their screams, smelling burning flesh, these experiences break morale faster than almost anything else. Enemy formations that would hold firm against bolter fire or artillery bombardment will often break and run when flamers come into play. Soldiers deciding that death while retreating is preferable to burning alive. The sound of flamer weapons is distinctive, the whoosh of igniting promethium, the roar of flames consuming fuel and oxygen, and underneath it all, often, the terrible screaming of those caught in the fire. On a chaotic battlefield with explosions and weapons fire creating a constant din, the sound of flamers stands out, a herald of approaching fire and immolation. Heavy flamers are enlarged versions of the standard weapon, typically carried by Space Marines, Terminators, or mounted on vehicles. These weapons project larger volumes of promethium at higher velocities, creating streams of fire that can reach further and burn more intensely. A heavy flamer can clear entire rooms in seconds, the backwash of flame from the weapon filling enclosed spaces with fire hot enough to melt metal and reduce everything organic to ash and charred bone. In siege warfare and urban combat, heavy flamers are invaluable tools, capable of clearing buildings, bunkers, and fortifications with brutal efficiency. The Adepta Sororitas, the order's militant commonly known as the Sisters of Battle, make particular use of flamers in their arsenal. For these warrior nuns, fire is not just a weapon, but a tool of purification, a way to cleanse the heretic and the alien from the Emperor's realm. Their doctrine emphasizes the use of flamer weapons, seeing in fire both a practical tool of war and a symbol of faith. When Sisters of Battle deploy en masse with flamers, entire battlefield sections disappear under walls of flame, enemies burned away in holy fire that serves both tactical and theological purposes. There's a particular horror in dying by fire that makes flamers especially brutal weapons. Unlike the instantaneous death of a bolter round to the head or the quick vaporization of a direct melta, burning to death takes time. Seconds that feel like hours as nerve endings scream, as flesh blisters and blackens, as your body's moisture boils away. Even if the fire doesn't kill you directly, the damage it causes, ruined lungs from inhaling superheated air, burned flesh that will never heal properly, the shock and trauma of such injuries often proves fatal anyway. Those who survive flamer attacks often bear the scars for the rest of their lives, horrible reminders of their brush with immolation. Promethium doesn't just burn hot, it burns long. The gel-like consistency that makes it stick to targets also means it continues burning even after the initial application, sustained by its own chemical composition rather than requiring continuous fuel from external sources. This creates a secondary tactical effect, where areas affected by flamer weapons remain dangerous even after the shooting stops. Pools of burning promethium turning corridors and rooms into fire-filled death traps that enemies must either brave or find alternate routes around. The tactical applications of flamer weapons extend beyond just killing enemies. In jungle warfare, flamers can clear dense vegetation that provides concealment for the enemy. In space Hulk exploration and purging missions, flamers are essential tools for clearing the twisted corridors and chambers of these nightmare environments. Against certain enemies like Tyranids, whose biological nature makes them particularly vulnerable to fire, or Orks, whose fear of fire is one of the few things that can reliably break their morale, flamers serve as specialized counter-tools. There are, of course, more exotic variants on the basic flamer design. Inferno guns used by specialized units fire super intense streams of promethium that burn even hotter than standard flamers, hot enough to threaten even heavily armored targets. Incinerators, favored by certain Space Marine chapters for dealing with demon incursions, fire blessed promethium that has been consecrated with specific rites, the flames considered sanctified and particularly effective against the denizens of the warp. The maintenance of flamer weapons is critically important and potentially hazardous. Promethium is a dangerous substance to handle, and the tanks that contain it must be carefully checked for leaks or damage. A compromised fuel tank on a flamer-armed soldier doesn't just mean the weapon won't work. It means the soldier might find themselves engulfed in their own weapon's fuel if they take a hit in combat. Tech priests and quartermasters treat promethium supplies with appropriate caution, knowing that accidents during handling, storage, or transport can result in conflagrations that consume entire ammunition depots or vehicle parks. Interestingly, flamers have a deterrent effect that goes beyond their actual use. The mere presence of flamer weapons in a combat zone affects enemy behavior. Soldiers who know flamers are in play will be more cautious about taking cover in enclosed spaces, more wary of bunching up, more prone to breaking if they think fire is about to be directed their way. This psychological impact can be as valuable as the weapon's direct combat capabilities, shaping the battlefield and enemy decision-making just by existing. Different xenos races have their own versions of flamer technology. Ork burners combine cutting torch functionality with flamer capabilities, allowing them to both melt through obstacles and incinerate enemies. The Tau rarely use flamer weapons, preferring to keep engagements at longer ranges where their superior marksmanship and technology give them advantages. But when they do employ them, typically in the form of burst cannons with incendiary rounds, they're devastating in their own right. The aftermath of flamer weapons is particularly grim. Burned bodies, often barely recognizable as having once been human or xenos, litter areas where flamers have been employed. The smell of burned flesh and promethium residue lingers long after the battle, a nauseating reminder of the weapon's effectiveness. Structures that have been subject to heavy flamer use are often left as charred shells, the interiors reduced to ash and molten metal, everything organic long since consumed by the flames. In the context of the most brutal weapons in Warhammer 40k, flamers occupy a unique position. They're not the most powerful weapons, not capable of destroying tanks or leveling buildings like some other options. But for sheer, visceral horror and for the suffering they inflict on their targets, flamers are hard to match. Fire is one of the oldest tools of war and one of the most feared, and in the 41st millennium, humanity has refined it to a terrible art. When promethium-fueled flames wash over enemy positions, reducing soldiers to screaming torches and cover to fuel for the fire, it's a reminder that sometimes the oldest methods of killing are still the most horrifyingly effective. Exotic xenos weapons. The Imperium of man, for all its vast arsenals and 10 millennia of weapons development, doesn't have a monopoly on brutal and devastating weaponry. The alien races that inhabit the galaxy, those xenos that humanity fights an endless war against, possess their own unique instruments of death, weapons that reflect their species' particular technological approaches, biological capabilities, and philosophical outlooks on warfare. Some of these weapons are even more horrifying than anything in the Imperium's armories. The Eldar, with their millions of years of technological development, have created weapons that operate on principles human science can barely comprehend. Their shuriken weapons are a perfect example. At first glance, a shuriken catapult or shuriken pistol might not seem that impressive. They fire small monomolecular discs at the target. But these discs are spinning at velocities that defy belief, and their monomolecular edges can slice through most armor like it isn't there. When a shuriken disc hits flesh, it doesn't just puncture, it slices as it passes through, the spinning creating a wound channel that's essentially a cylinder of shredded tissue. More horrifying still is what happens when multiple discs hit the same target. The Eldar weapons are designed to fire in bursts, sending streams of these razor-sharp discs downrange. A target hit by a full burst from a shuriken catapult doesn't just die. They're literally sliced to pieces, their body turned into disconnected chunks of meat by the dozens of spinning discs passing through them. The weapon is devastatingly effective against lightly armored opponents, and even heavily armored targets can be brought down by concentrated fire as the discs find seams and weak points in the armor. The Eldar's approach to warfare emphasizes precision and efficiency, and their weapons reflect this. They don't create crude instruments of overwhelming force. Instead, they engineer perfectly balanced tools that achieve maximum lethality with minimum waste. A shuriken disc weighs almost nothing, yet when properly employed, it can kill as effectively as a bolter round. This efficiency allows Eldar warriors to carry enormous amounts of ammunition, enabling sustained firefights that would empty a Space Marine's bolt stores in minutes. The Necrons, those ancient xenos who battled the Old Ones in the War in Heaven 60 million years ago, possess weapons that make even the most advanced Imperial technology look primitive. Their Gauss flayers are a perfect example. These weapons don't fire projectiles in any conventional sense. Instead, they project a beam that causes molecular disintegration, stripping away layers of matter at the atomic level. Hit by a Gauss flare, a target doesn't burn or explode. They flake away, their body disintegrating layer by layer, reduced to atoms and dust while they're still alive to experience it. The process is excruciatingly painful and psychologically devastating to witness. Imagine watching a fellow soldier get hit by a Gauss flare beam. Their armor starts flaking away like rust, then their flesh beneath, muscle and bone, disintegrating layer by microscopic layer. They're still screaming as their body literally disappears, still conscious as they watch themselves reduce to component atoms. Few weapons in the galaxy inspire quite the same existential horror as Necron Gauss weapons. Necron weaponry doesn't stop there. Their particle whips operate on similar principles, but in a more exotic fashion, creating lashes of energy that flay targets at the molecular level. The Gauss cannon, the heavy weapon version of the Gauss flare, can disintegrate entire squads with single sweeps, leaving nothing behind but slowly settling clouds of dust that were, seconds before, living soldiers. The technological superiority of the Necrons is such that even a basic Necron warrior, the lowest tier of their forces, carries a weapon that the Adeptus Mechanicus would consider priceless archaeotech if they could study one without being disintegrated. The Orks, by contrast, don't rely on technological sophistication. Instead, they rely on the sheer insanity of their weapons and their unconscious psychic field that makes these impossible contraptions actually work. The shock attack gun is perhaps the best example of Ork weapons engineering, if it can be called that. This weapon creates a tunnel through the warp, the chaotic dimension that underlies reality, and teleports a swarm of angry snotlings, small orc creatures, directly into the target. These snotlings, driven mad by their brief passage through hell and materialization inside enemy bodies or vehicles, tear apart whatever they find themselves inside before dying from the trauma of teleportation. From the outside, watching someone get hit by a shock attack gun is bizarre and horrible. The target suddenly starts convulsing and screaming as snotlings literally appear inside their body, tearing through organs and bones from the inside out. Sometimes the teleportation goes wrong. It almost always goes wrong in some way, and the target gets sent into the warp instead, experiencing horrors beyond mortal comprehension before being mercifully annihilated. Sometimes the gun teleports part of the target somewhere else entirely, leaving them missing random chunks of their anatomy. The shock attack gun shouldn't work. It violates multiple laws of physics. But it does work, because the Orks believe it works, and that collective belief makes it reality. The Dark Eldar, those twisted cousins of the craft world Eldar, who reside in the nightmare realm of Komorrah, have developed weapons specifically designed to maximize suffering. Their technology isn't just about killing, it's about torment, about harvesting the psychic energy released by pain and fear. The Agonizer is a perfect example, a close combat weapon that doesn't simply damage the target's body, but attacks their nervous system directly, causing pain so intense that the victim's brain simply cannot process it. Warriors struck by agonizers have been known to go into shock from the pain alone, even when the physical damage inflicted is relatively minor. The Dark Eldar's blasters operate on a principle similar to Imperial melta weapons, but refined and perfected over millennia. These weapons are more efficient, longer ranged, and more reliably lethal than their Imperial equivalents. But what makes Dark Eldar weapons particularly brutal isn't their technical specifications. It's the intent behind their design. Every Dark Eldar weapon is crafted with an understanding of anatomy, physiology, and pain that borders on the supernatural. They know exactly where to hit to cause maximum suffering while keeping the target alive. Because for the Dark Eldar, quick deaths are a waste of potential psychic nourishment. The Homunculi, the Dark Eldar's twisted flesh crafters, create some of the most nightmarish weapons in the galaxy. The flesh gauntlet, for instance, can reshape the target's body, turning flesh into other forms, twisting limbs into impossible angles, all while keeping the victim alive and conscious through the transformation. These aren't weapons designed for the battlefield so much as tools of terror and torture, but Dark Eldar raiders use them in combat anyway, enjoying the psychological impact they have on enemies who witness their effects. The Tyranids represent an entirely different approach to weaponry, biological weapons that are literally parts of the creatures themselves. A Tyranid warrior's bone sword isn't a manufactured weapon, but a limb that happens to be sword-shaped, grown as part of the creature's body, with monomolecular edges and structural strength that rivals the best Imperial ceramite. The creature doesn't wield the weapon, it is the weapon. Similarly, Tyranid ranged weapons are symbiotic organisms that fuse with the host creature. The Devourers, Flesh Borers, and other bioweapons that Tyranids carry aren't machines loaded with ammunition. They're living creatures that produce and fire the ammunition themselves. A Devourer literally vomits out clusters of flesh-burrowing beetles that eat into targets, while Flesh Borers fire burrowing maggots that eat through armor and flesh to get at the soft internals. Being killed by Tyranid weapons means being eaten alive by swarms of organism, a death that's both painful and psychologically horrifying. The weapons themselves are disturbing to behold. They pulse and writhe with organic life. They make wet, organic sounds when they fire. They bleed if damaged. Fighting Tyranids means facing an enemy whose weapons are as alive as they are, creatures that are themselves weapons, extensions of the hive mind's will, made manifest in biological forms optimized for killing. Each xenos race's weapons reflect their fundamental nature, the Eldar's precision and efficiency honed over millions of years, the Necrons' cold technological supremacy and their utter lack of regard for organic life, the Orks' brutal practicality and psychic delusion, the Dark Eldar's obsession with pain and suffering, the Tyranids' biological horror and adaptation. These weapons are more than just tools. They're expressions of philosophy, statements about how each race approaches the problem of killing their enemies. What makes many xenos' weapons particularly brutal isn't just their effectiveness, but their alienness. When a human dies to a bolter, there's a certain familiarity to it. It's a gun. It shoots explosive rounds. It kills. The technology is understandable, even if the scale and effectiveness are enhanced. But dying to a Gauss flare that disintegrates you at the molecular level, or to Dark Eldar weapons designed specifically to maximize your suffering, or to Tyranid bioweapons that eat you alive from the inside, these deaths are alien, wrong in ways that human psychology struggles to process. The Imperium's encounters with these xenos weapons have shaped their understanding of the threats they face. Facing enemies with Gauss flares taught them that even Space Marine armor can be rendered meaningless. Encountering Dark Eldar weaponry demonstrated that some enemies fight not to win territory or resources, but to inflict suffering for its own sake. Battling Tyranids showed that weapons don't need to be manufactured or understood. They can simply be grown, evolved, adapted to counter whatever defenses the enemy presents. In the context of brutal weapons in the 40k universe, these xenos instruments of death serve as a reminder that humanity doesn't have a monopoly on horrifying ways to kill. The galaxy is filled with species who have had millions of years to perfect their craft, who view warfare through fundamentally alien perspectives, who've developed weapons that operate on principles human science barely comprehends. When Space Marines face these xenos weapons, they're confronting the reality that despite all humanity's power and determination, despite 10,000 years of warfare and weapons development, there are still enemies out there with tools of destruction that can kill the Emperor's finest as easily as an Imperial guard Lasman kills a Gretchen. Planet killers, Exterminatus. Up until now, we've discussed weapons that kill individuals, squads, armies, weapons that destroy buildings, vehicles, fortifications. Even the most powerful weapons we've covered, plasma cannons, heavy melta weapons, are fundamentally tactical or operational in their scope. They affect the battlefield, shape engagements, determine the outcome of individual battles. But in the grim darkness of the far future, there are threats so dire, corruption so complete, and contamination so catastrophic that tactical solutions are insufficient. For these situations, the Imperium maintains weapons that don't just win battles or even wars, they end worlds. Exterminatus is the High Gothic term for the total destruction of a planetary biosphere, the annihilation of all life on a world. It's not a decision taken lightly. Even in an Imperium that casually spends millions of lives in warfare, even in a civilization that views human life as the cheapest resource available, destroying an entire world, potentially billions of people, requires authorization from the highest authorities. Inquisitors can order Exterminatus. Chapter Masters of the Space Marines can authorize it. High Admirals of the Imperial Navy have this power, but using it comes with consequences. If your fellow Inquisitors or chapter leadership decide the Exterminatus wasn't justified, you'll find yourself declared a heretic and hunted down yourself. The most iconic Exterminatus weapon is the virus bomb, though these have largely been replaced in modern Imperial arsenals by more reliable technologies. Virus bombs contain a weaponized pathogen known as the Life Eater virus, a piece of bioweapon engineering from humanity's dark past. This virus doesn't just kill, it aggressively attacks and breaks down all organic matter it encounters, reducing every living thing on a planet's surface to an undifferentiated sludge of biochemical compounds. The process is horrifyingly fast. Virus bombs deployed in atmosphere spread their payload across entire continents in minutes. The Life-Eater virus can penetrate power armor, sealed vehicles, even void suits with minimal atmospheric protection. Anyone exposed begins breaking down almost immediately. Flesh rots and liquefies. Internal organs dissolve. Bones soften and collapse. In a matter of hours, a world teeming with life is reduced to a planet-wide ocean of organic sludge, dead vegetation, and the decomposing remains of what were, that morning, cities filled with people going about their lives. But the horror doesn't end there. As all this organic matter breaks down, it releases enormous quantities of flammable gas. The standard Exterminatus protocol calls for igniting this gas with incendiary devices or lance strikes from orbiting vessels. The result is a planet-wide firestorm, atmospheric pressure waves that scour the surface clean, temperatures that melt rock and glass and turn what's left of the organic sludge into ash and sterile compounds. When the fires finally burn out, usually days or weeks later, what's left is a dead world, its atmosphere potentially burned away entirely, its surface sterilized of all life down to the bacterial level. The virus bombing of Istvan III at the start of the Horus Heresy remains one of the most infamous uses of this weapon. Warmaster Horus, newly turned to chaos, used virus bombs to murder billions of loyal Imperials and Space Marines in a single strike. The scale of death was incomprehensible. Entire hive cities full of people reduced to sludge in minutes. Loyalist Space Marines who thought they were deploying to put down a rebellion found themselves dying by the thousands as the Life-Eater virus ate through their power armor's seals and consumed them from within. Those who survived the initial viral attack, sheltered deep underground or in specially sealed structures, faced the subsequent firestorm that cooked entire continents. Cyclonic torpedoes represent the modern Imperial answer to planetary sterilization. These are massive weapons, larger and more powerful than standard void warfare torpedoes, designed specifically for orbital bombardment on a catastrophic scale. There are actually several different types of weapons that fall under the cyclonic torpedo classification, but they all share a common goal: the complete destruction of all life on the target world. Some cyclonic torpedoes work by initiating thermonuclear chain reactions that ignite all the free oxygen in a planet's atmosphere. Imagine every molecule of oxygen across an entire world suddenly combusting in a chain reaction that propagates at thousands of kilometers per second. The result is a fireball that engulfs the entire planet. Atmospheric pressure waves that travel faster than sound and hit with force measured in megatons per square kilometer. Oceans flashboil into superheated steam. Rock melts and runs like water. Mountains crumble, cities vaporize, and every living thing on the surface dies in seconds, consumed by fire that makes the cores of suns look cold by comparison. Other cyclonic torpedoes use plasma bombardment technology, essentially turning the weapon into a massive plasma cannon that dumps fusion-level energy into the planet's surface. The effect is similar: planetary biosphere destruction, atmospheric burning, surface sterilization, but achieved through different means. The exact method doesn't matter much to the people dying, of course. Whether they're burning in nuclear fire or being hit by fusion plasma, the result is the same: extinction. The visual of a cyclonic torpedo attack is something that haunts those who've witnessed it. From orbit, you see the detonation, a flash of light bright enough to be painful, even through protective visors and void ship viewports. Then the blast wave expands, a sphere of fire and devastation that grows to engulf entire continents. If the planet has oceans, you watch them boil away, clouds of superheated steam exploding into space. The atmosphere burns, literally burns, catching fire in a chain reaction that makes the world look like a miniature star for hours or days. When it's over, when the fires finally die down and the plasma disperses, what's left is a scorched ball of rock, a dead world that will never support life again without massive terraforming efforts. Two-stage cyclonic torpedoes are even more devastating. These weapons feature a two-part warhead. The The first stage uses a massive melta charge to bore straight through the planet's crust and mantle, drilling down to the core. The second stage is a modified cyclonic plasma charge that detonates at the planetary core, destabilizing it from the inside. The result isn't just sterilization of the surface, it's the physical destruction of the entire planet. The core destabilizes, the mantle cracks and ruptures, magma explodes through the crust in thousands of simultaneous volcanic eruptions, and in many cases, the planet literally breaks apart, shattering into fragments that will eventually form an asteroid field. Two-stage cyclonic torpedoes are typically reserved for worlds that are already dead or uninhabited, like Necron tomb worlds, where there's no atmosphere to burn and no organic life to kill. You can't virus bomb a tomb world, the Necrons aren't alive. You can't rely on atmospheric ignition when there's no atmosphere. So instead, you destroy the entire planet, ensuring that whatever Necrons are buried beneath the surface are crushed, scattered, and hopefully disabled by the planet's destruction. The atmospheric incinerator torpedo is another variant, using an advanced plasma device that detonates in low planetary orbit and ignites all oxygen in the atmosphere. The method is slightly different from standard cyclonic torpedoes, but the effect is identical. The world burns, the atmosphere transforms into fire, and everything on the surface dies. The atmospheric incinerator used on Medusa 4 was so effective that the planet's surface was melted to glass, the entire world glowing like an ember in space for weeks after the attack. Deadliest-class atmospheric missiles take a different approach, using phosphex weapons instead of nuclear or plasma charges. Phosphex is a chemical compound so aggressive and persistent that it was banned even during the Great Crusade, considered too dangerous and uncontrollable for regular military use. A phosphex flame doesn't just burn, it consumes. It eats through nearly anything organic or carbon-based, and it can't be extinguished by conventional means. Deploy phosphex across a planet's surface, and the resultant green mist consumes everything, eating its way through forests, cities, people, animals, everything with carbon in its structure. The fires burn for weeks or months, refusing to go out, turning the world into a hellscape of eternal green flame. The decision to authorize Exterminatus carries an enormous moral and practical weight. You're not just killing enemy soldiers or even enemy civilians. You're destroying everything. The guardsmen who might have been saved if given more time, the civilians who could have been evacuated, the infrastructure that could have been reclaimed, the resources that could have been recovered, all of it gone, reduced to ash and slag and sterile rock. The Imperium needs every world it can hold, needs every resource it can gather. Destroying a planet represents a massive loss of potential manpower, industry, and strategic position. But sometimes the alternative is worse. A world that has fallen entirely to chaos corruption can't be saved. The taint runs too deep, the population already transformed into cultists and worse. Even if you could kill every chaos-corrupted human on the surface, the world itself is often so steeped in warp energy that it would corrupt future settlers just as completely. Necron tomb worlds can't be held. The technology gap is too vast, and every moment you allow them to wake more of their forces is a moment that makes eventual victory less likely. Tyranid-infested worlds are literally being consumed, the biomass of the entire planet being processed into more Tyranids. You can't reclaim what's already been eaten. Genestealer cults present a particularly insidious problem. By the time the cult reveals itself and the Tyranid fleet arrives, the planetary population is so heavily infiltrated that you can't tell infected from uninfected. The only way to ensure the taint doesn't spread to other worlds is total sterilization. Better to lose one world than allow the infection to spread to a dozen others. The psychological impact of Exterminatus on those who carry it out shouldn't be underestimated. The ship crews who release the Cyclonic Torpedoes, the Inquisitors who give the order, the chapter masters who authorize the destruction. These people have to live with the knowledge that they ended a world that billions of deaths are on their conscience. Some carry this burden with the grim acceptance that comes from centuries in the Imperium's service. Others are haunted by it, the faces of the people they killed appearing in their dreams, the knowledge of what they've done eating away at them, even as they justify it as necessary. In the context of brutal weapons in Warhammer 40k, Exterminatus class weapons occupy a unique position. They're not brutal in the sense of causing individual suffering. Most deaths from Exterminatus are actually quite fast. The victims overwhelmed by destructive forces beyond comprehension before they have time to suffer. But the scale, the sheer totality of the destruction, the fact that entire worlds can be rendered lifeless in hours, that's a different kind of brutality. It's the brutality of absolute solutions, of civilizations so desperate and so threatened that they'd rather destroy worlds than risk them falling to the enemy. It's the brutality of a future so dark that planetary genocide is considered a reasonable and sometimes necessary military option. Apocalyptic arsenal, reality-breaking weapons. Beyond the planet killers, beyond even the weapons of Exterminatus, there exist in the Warhammer 40,000 universe weapons so powerful, so reality-defying, so utterly devastating that they make cyclonic torpedoes look like firecrackers by comparison. These are weapons that don't just destroy worlds but threaten entire systems, that don't just kill but erase, that operate on principles that seem to violate the laws of physics as we understand them. Many of these weapons date back to the War in Heaven, that ancient conflict between the Old Ones and the Necrons that reshaped the galaxy 60 million years before humanity even existed. The Celestial Orrery stands at the pinnacle of destructive capability in the known galaxy. Located in the Necron crown world of Thanatos, sealed away and protected by the most powerful of the Necron dynasties, the Celestial Orrery is perhaps the single most dangerous object in existence. It appears as a representation of the Milky Way galaxy, showing every star system with perfect accuracy. But the orrery isn't just a display or a map. It's a direct interface with reality itself. When you manipulate a star in the Celestial Orrery, the real star moves. Touch a star in the display, and you can alter its position, its output, its stability. Want to make a star go supernova, destroying everything in that system? A simple manipulation of the orrery achieves it. Want to move a star closer to a system that depends on it, or further away, changing the climate and making the world uninhabitable? The orrery allows it. The weapon doesn't fire projectiles or beams. It doesn't need to. It manipulates reality at the largest possible scale, making changes to the fundamental structure of the galaxy itself. The Necrons who guard the Celestial Orrery use it with extreme caution, understanding that careless manipulation of stellar mechanics can have cascading effects. Move one star, and you might affect the gravitational balance of nearby systems. Change too many stars, and you could destabilize entire stellar regions, creating chain reactions that ripple through the galaxy. The Necrons have had 60 million years to understand the consequences of using the orrery, and they've learned that even with godlike power, caution is warranted. The Blackstone Fortresses represent another class of reality-breaking weapons, though their true nature and origin remain mysterious, even after millennia of study. 7 of these massive space stations are known to have existed, though their current status varies. Some have been destroyed, others lost or claimed by chaos. Each Blackstone fortress is kilometers across, a structure of dark stone that seems to absorb light and emit an aura of wrongness that affects those nearby. The power of a single Blackstone fortress is sufficient to devastate fleets and planetary surfaces. 2 Blackstone fortresses working in concert can destroy a planet. 3 or more can destabilize stars, causing them to nova and annihilate everything in their system. These aren't weapons that fire projectiles. They manipulate fundamental forces, projecting beams of energy that seem to bypass conventional defenses entirely. Ships hit by Blackstone Fortress weapons often simply cease to exist, torn apart at a level that leaves nothing but dispersing particles. Abaddon the Despoiler, the War Master of Chaos, managed to capture or destroy all the Blackstone fortresses that the Imperium had discovered, using some of them as weapons during his Black Crusades. Watching a Blackstone fortress attack is watching cosmic-scale destruction unleashed, beams of dark energy lancing across void distances to pierce planetary shields and armor, as if they weren't there. The world engine encountered by the Imperium was a Necron weapon of such scale that it defied easy categorization. It appeared as a planet, but it was actually a massive weapon platform and ship, a world-sized vessel capable of destroying other worlds through directed energy bombardment. Its defenses were so powerful that conventional fleet actions against it proved futile. Ships that attacked the world engine were simply destroyed, their weapons fire doing minimal damage, while the engine's return fire obliterated them. It took the sacrifice of an entire Space Marine vessel, ramming at full speed into a critical point in the engine's structure, to finally bring it down. The death toll was measured in millions, and even after its destruction, the wreckage represented enough technological material to supply Forge worlds for centuries. The world engine was proof that the Necrons had developed weapons that treated entire planets as ammunition, starships as targets no more significant than infantry to a tank. Vortex weapons represent humanity's attempt to weaponize the warp itself, creating miniature tiers in reality that pull targets into the chaotic dimension where the laws of physics hold no sway. Vortex grenades, vortex missiles, and other delivery systems for this technology work by creating a temporary breach in the barrier between real space and the warp. Anything caught in the vortex is pulled through, experiencing brief moments of indescribable horror as they're exposed to the raw stuff of the warp before being annihilated, or worse. The creation of vortex weapons is a closely guarded secret, known only to the highest echelons of the Adeptus Mechanicus and the most trusted members of the Inquisition. The process of creating a controlled tear in reality is extraordinarily dangerous, and more than one attempt to manufacture vortex weapons has resulted in catastrophic breaches that consumed entire facilities and everyone in them. Yet the weapons continue to be produced, because when you absolutely need to destroy something, and conventional weapons aren't sufficient, creating a hole to hell and throwing your enemy into it is sometimes the only option. Conversion beamers represent another class of reality-manipulating weapons. These devices convert matter directly into energy, essentially achieving instantaneous annihilation of whatever they hit. The target doesn't explode or burn or disintegrate. It simply ceases to exist, its mass converted into a brief flash of energy. The effect is both fascinating and horrifying to witness. One moment there's a target, the next moment there's nothing, not even dust or vapor, just empty space where something used to be. The Aeonic Orb, a Necron weapon, contains the power of an entire star. When deployed and activated, it can be positioned near strategic points where its immense gravitational and energy fields make it a nearly impregnable defensive position. But if its shields are brought down, if enough damage is inflicted on its containment systems, the orb does what stars do when their containment fails. It goes nova, releasing all the energy of the captive star at once in an explosion that destroys everything in the system, friend and foe alike. These apocalyptic weapons share a common characteristic. They're so powerful that using them carries enormous risks. The celestial orrery could destabilize the galaxy if used carelessly. Blackstone fortresses can crack planets, but doing so requires resources and coordination that few can muster. Vortex weapons might create breaches that can't be closed. The world engine required a world's resources to operate. These aren't weapons you deploy casually or in routine combat. They're weapons of last resort, tools for conflicts where the stakes are measured not in territory or resources, but in the survival of entire civilizations. The existence of these weapons colors the entire setting of Warhammer 40k. Knowing that there are forces in the galaxy capable of casually destroying stars, manipulating reality, or weaponizing dimensions of pure chaos. This knowledge affects how every faction approaches warfare and survival. The Imperium's desperate, aggressive expansion isn't just paranoia. It's a rational response to knowing that there are powers out there with weapons that could end humanity entirely if deployed in sufficient numbers. The brutal nature of these weapons isn't in how they kill individuals. Most of them kill so completely and at such scale that individual deaths are meaningless in the context of their use. The brutality is in what they represent, a galaxy so violent, so filled with existential threats, that weapons capable of destroying star systems are considered necessary defensive tools. A future where the phrase, acceptable losses, might include entire planets or even systems. A universe where the most powerful forces can reshape reality itself and use that power to wage war on scales that beggar human comprehension. When we talk about the most brutal weapons in Warhammer 40k, these apocalyptic instruments of destruction represent the ultimate expression of the setting's dark themes. They show us a universe where war isn't just a constant presence, but operates at scales beyond our ability to fully grasp, where the weapons themselves are so powerful that their mere existence shapes the strategic and political landscape of the galaxy, where the difference between victory and annihilation might be measured in whether someone decides to activate a weapon that can move stars or tear holes in reality itself. Close-range carnage, more melee horrors. While much of modern warfare in the 41st millennium takes place at range, with bolters and plasma guns and orbital bombardments deciding battles before enemies even see each other, there remains something primal and terrifying about close combat. The chainsword may be the most iconic melee weapon, but the brutal arsenal of the Imperium and its enemies contains numerous other implements designed to kill up close and personal. Chain axes take the tearing power of the chainsword and combine it with the chopping force of an axe design. These weapons are favored by cornate berserkers, those chaos space marines, who have dedicated themselves to the blood god. A chain axe, in the hands of a frenzied berserker, becomes a tool of wholesale slaughter. The weapon is heavier than a chainsword, requires two hands to wield effectively, and delivers blows with enough force to split armored targets from shoulder to hip. The brutality of a chain axe comes from both its mechanical action and the momentum behind its swings. The spinning teeth bite into armor and flesh, while the weight of the weapon drives it forward, the axe head design concentrating force at the point of impact. Unlike a chainsword that requires sustained contact to be most effective, a chain axe delivers maximum damage on the initial strike, making it ideal for the aggressive overhead chops favored by assault-oriented fighters. Witchblades and force weapons represent the psychic warrior's answer to power weapons. These weapons are designed to channel a psyker's mental powers, amplifying and focusing psychic energy into physical force. A witchblade in the hands of an Eldar warlock doesn't just cut, it burns with psychic fire, disrupts the target's mental processes, and can sever a soul from a body as easily as it severs limbs from torsos. Force weapons used by Imperial psykers work on similar principles, but with different implementations. A Grey Knight wielding a Nemesis force weapon channels his psychic might through the blade, each strike carrying not just physical force, but mental assault as well. Demons, creatures of pure warp energy given temporary form, are particularly vulnerable to force weapons. The psychic nature of the blade allowing it to wound them in ways conventional weapons cannot. The combat application of force weapons requires a level of concentration and mental discipline beyond what normal weapons demand. The psyker must maintain focus on channeling their power while simultaneously engaging in the physical demands of close combat. This makes force weapon combat exhausting in ways that conventional melee fighting isn't. But the rewards are worth it. A well-trained psyker with a force weapon can kill enemies that would laugh off bolter fire, can pierce protections that would turn aside power swords, can destroy targets that exist partially in the warp where physical weapons cannot reach. Poisoned weapons, particularly those used by Dark Eldar and certain chaos cults, represent a different approach to close combat lethality. These weapons aren't necessarily more physically damaging than unpoisoned variants, but they deliver toxins, venoms, or chemical cocktails specifically designed to kill through systemic shock rather than trauma. A small cut from a poisoned blade might not seem serious initially, but seconds or minutes later, the target's nervous system shuts down, their organs fail, their blood becomes toxic to their own body. The Dark Eldar have perfected the art of poisoned weapons over millennia. Their toxins are tailored to specific physiologies, designed to cause maximum suffering before death. Some paralyze while leaving the victim conscious and aware. Others cause hallucinations and madness. Still others simply shut down the body's systems one by one, the victim experiencing organ failure in sequence, knowing what's happening but unable to stop it. Combat knives in the 40k setting are far removed from simple blades. These are weapons forged from advanced alloys, often incorporating monomolecular edges or minor power field generators. A combat knife in the hands of a Space Marine scout or an Imperial Guard Special Forces operator is a precision instrument, designed for silent kills, for cutting through materials that normal knives can't touch, for reliability in conditions that would destroy lesser blades. The Katakan fighting knife deserves special mention. These blades, standard issue for the Katakan regiments known for their jungle warfare expertise, are designed to function as knives, machetes, and short swords interchangeably. They're balanced for throwing, weighted for chopping, and sharp enough for precision cuts. In the hands of a Katakan veteran, these knives have killed everything from jungle predators to chaos space marines. Proof that even in an age of plasma weapons and orbital bombardment, a well-made blade in skilled hands remains a deadly tool. Thunderhammers, which we touched on earlier, deserve further exploration in the context of their use in close combat. These weapons aren't subtle. When a thunderhammer strikes, everyone on the battlefield knows it. The crack of released energy, the shockwave that knocks nearby combatants off their feet, the sight of the target flying backward with their armor crushed and their bones pulverized. This is warfare at its most visceral. The technique for using a thunderhammer effectively requires perfect timing. The weapon stores energy with each swing, building to maximum charge just before impact. Hit too early and you waste the charge without delivering full power. Hit too late and the energy dissipates harmlessly. Master users of thunderhammers develop an almost supernatural sense of timing, learning to feel when the weapon is at full charge, when the moment for striking has arrived. Eviscerators, those massive two-handed chainswords, favored by zealous priests and fanatical warriors, represent the ultimate expression of bigger is better when applied to chainsword technology. These weapons are so large and unwieldy that even Space Marines find them challenging to use effectively. But the power they deliver when swung properly is phenomenal. An eviscerator can cut through vehicles, can bisect armored warriors with single strokes, can reduce enemies to component pieces in sweeping attacks that cover wide arcs. The combat style for eviscerators is necessarily different from standard chainsword technique. The weapon is too heavy, too large for the quick strikes and rapid engagements typical of one-handed chainsword use. Instead, eviscerator wielders use overhead chops, sweeping horizontal strikes, and powerful thrusts, each attack delivered with maximum force behind it. The weapon's size and weight become advantages, momentum and mass, multiplying the cutting power of the spinning teeth to devastating effect. Lightning claws deserve more detailed examination than our earlier discussion provided. These weapons transform the user into a whirlwind of death, each hand a set of powered blades that can strike independently or in concert. The combat style developed for lightning claws emphasizes constant motion, flowing attacks that chain from one strike to the next, overwhelming opponents through sheer volume of assault rather than singular, powerful blows. Watching a master of lightning claw combat is witnessing deadly poetry in motion. Their hands blur, the powered claws leaving afterimages of blue-white energy in the air. Enemies fall in rapid succession, each one opened by slashing attacks that sever arteries, pierce organs, decapitate, or dismember. The wielder moves through enemy formations like a scythe through wheat, leaving trails of carnage in their wake. The psychological impact of facing lightning claws is considerable. Unlike weapons that deliver single devastating strikes, the psychological impact of facing lightning claws is considerable. Unlike weapons that deliver single devastating strikes, lightning claws promise death by 1,000 cuts, each one potentially fatal, the wielder coming at you with bladed hands that never seem to stop moving. There's no defense except to kill the attacker before they reach you, because once they're in range, those claws will find you, will slice through your guard, will open your flesh and spill your blood. Demon weapons represent the ultimate corruption of melee weapons, blades and axes and swords that contain bound demons, entities of the warp imprisoned within the weapon structure. These weapons are alive in ways that even the most sophisticated Imperial weapons with their machine spirits cannot match. They hunger, they rage, they whisper to their wielders, promising power while slowly corrupting the soul of anyone who dares use them. A demon weapon is devastatingly effective in combat. The blade cuts with unnatural sharpness, guided by malevolent intelligence that knows where to strike for maximum damage. The weapon sometimes moves on its own, pulling the wielder's arm toward vulnerable targets, striking with speed and precision beyond mortal capability. Some demon weapons drain the life force of those they cut, healing their wielder while killing their enemies. Others set wounds aflame with warp fire that can't be extinguished by normal means. But the price of wielding a demon weapon is steep. The demon constantly attempts to dominate the wielder's will, to turn the weapon against allies, to corrupt the wielder's soul until they become nothing more than a puppet for the demon's hunger. Many who take up demon weapons, thinking to control their power, end up as slaves to the blade, their personality subsumed by the demon within, their body merely a vehicle for the weapon's malevolent desires. Frostblades, unique to the Space Wolves, combine the cutting power of chain weapons with power weapon technology and the chapter's own psychic frost powers. The resulting weapons are masterworks of artifice, each one crafted with painstaking care by the chapter's iron priests. The teeth are cut from materials like ice kraken fangs, creatures from the Space Wolves' homeworld of Fenris, or from tempered diamond, creating edges that can cut through nearly anything. The power fields that envelop frostblades have a distinctive, cold blue cast, and targets struck by these weapons report a sensation of numbing cold before the cutting begins. The weapons don't just cut, they freeze, the disruption field somehow incorporating principles of thermal manipulation that supercool targets even as the teeth tear through them. Warriors cut by frostblades often have their wounds sealed by flash freezing before they can bleed out, an unintended mercy that keeps enemies alive longer to experience the pain of their injuries. Relic blades are weapons that date back centuries or even millennia, swords and axes that have been wielded by legendary heroes and passed down through generations of warriors. These weapons often incorporate technology that can no longer be replicated, forging techniques lost to time, materials that exist nowhere else in the Imperium's current holdings. They're not just weapons but pieces of history, artifacts that carry the weight of every battle they've witnessed, every enemy they've killed, every hero who's wielded them. The power of a relic blade goes beyond its physical characteristics. These weapons have machine spirits that are ancient and powerful, that have bonded with countless wielders over the centuries. In the hands of a worthy warrior, a relic blade performs beyond its specifications, cutting more cleanly, striking with uncanny accuracy, somehow always being in the right position at the right moment. Whether this is due to the sophistication of the weapon's machine spirit or something more mystical and less explicable is a question that tech priests and chaplains have debated for millennia without reaching consensus. The tactical doctrine around melee weapons in 40k warfare has evolved over 10,000 years. In the early days of the Great Crusade, close combat was seen as a last resort, something that happened when ranged combat failed or when clearing fortifications. But as the Imperium encountered enemies that excelled at melee combat, Orks who lived for close quarters brawling, Tyranids whose biology made them natural killing machines up close, chaos, Space Marines blessed with enhanced strength and demonic power, the importance of effective melee capabilities became clear. Modern Space Marine doctrine emphasizes combined arms approaches where melee specialists and ranged combatants work together, each covering the weaknesses of the other. Assault squads with chainswords and power weapons charge forward to engage the enemy in close combat, while tactical squads with bolters provide covering fire and eliminate enemies trying to flank the assault. Terminators with power fists and thunder hammers absorb enemy fire while closing the distance, their armor sufficient to survive the approach before they crash into enemy lines like an avalanche of ceramite and fury. The training required to master melee weapons in the 40k setting is extensive and never-ending. Space Marines spend decades or even centuries perfecting their technique, learning the subtle differences between fighting with a power sword versus a chainsword, understanding how to adjust their style when facing different enemy types. An approach that works perfectly against Orks might be suicide against Eldar. Techniques effective against Imperial Guard rebels fail catastrophically against Chaos Space Marines. The best melee combatants are those who can adapt, who've fought enough different enemies to understand the nuances of each engagement. The aftermath of melee combat in 40k is particularly gruesome. Battlefields where significant close combat has occurred are covered in dismembered corpses, blood slicks meters wide, severed limbs, open torsos spilling organs onto the ground. The smell alone, blood, viscera, voided bowels, the ozone scent from power weapons, burned flesh from plasma and melta weapons used at point-blank range, is enough to break the will of inexperienced soldiers. Veterans become accustomed to it, their senses dulled by exposure to carnage. But even they never truly become immune to the horror of what close combat creates. In the context of Brutal Weapons, the melee arsenal of Warhammer 40k represents a different kind of horror than ranged weapons provide. When you kill someone with a bolter, there's distance, abstraction. When you kill someone in melee, you feel the weapon connect, you see their eyes, you smell their blood, you hear their final gasps. It's personal in ways that ranged combat rarely is. And that intimacy, that personal nature of close combat killing, adds a psychological dimension that makes melee weapons brutal in ways that transcend their pure destructive power. The philosophy of brutality. As we reach the conclusion of our exploration through Warhammer 40k's arsenal of horror, it's worth stepping back to examine what these weapons tell us about the setting itself. These aren't just cool designs or interesting game mechanics. They're reflections of a universe's values, expressions of its fundamental philosophies about war, survival, and the price of existence in the 41st millennium. The Imperium's weapons reveal a civilization in decline, desperately clinging to technologies it no longer fully understands, while facing threats that would destroy it utterly, if given the chance. The very existence of weapons like plasma guns, which kill their users with alarming frequency, shows an Imperium willing to accept horrific casualties in the name of maintaining military effectiveness. The continued use of chainswords, instead of more sophisticated melee weapons, speaks to a culture that values brutal effectiveness over elegance or efficiency. The willingness to deploy Exterminatus weapons, to destroy entire worlds rather than risk their loss to the enemy, demonstrates a level of ruthless pragmatism that borders on nihilism. Each weapon category we've explored represents different aspects of the Imperium's approach to warfare. Bolters embody the Space Marine philosophy of overwhelming force applied with precision, creating weapons that are simultaneously crude in concept and sophisticated in execution. Power weapons show the Imperium's reverence for technology it can no longer create, ancient implements that are as much religious relics as military equipment. Flamers demonstrate humanity's willingness to use the most primal and terrifying methods of killing when the situation demands it. And the weapons of Exterminatus show an Imperium that has calculated that some threats are so dire that planetary genocide is the only rational response. The xenos weapons we've examined tell equally revealing stories about the races that created them. Eldar weapons speak of a civilization that has had millions of years to perfect efficiency, that understands warfare at levels humanity can barely comprehend, yet whose very perfection has made them brittle and unable to match humanity's adaptability. Necron weapons demonstrate the cold logic of a species that has transcended organic limitations entirely, viewing warfare as a mathematical problem to be solved through application of superior technology. Ork weapons show that sometimes belief and enthusiasm matter more than technical sophistication, that a weapon doesn't need to make sense to be effective if enough people think it should work. Tyranid bioweapons reveal a species that doesn't manufacture weapons, but grows them, evolving solutions to defensive problems in real time through biological adaptation. The evolution of weapons throughout 40k's history mirrors the setting's broader themes of decline and desperation. During the Great Crusade, humanity wielded weapons at the peak of their development, technologies created when understanding of science was at its zenith. The Horus heresy saw many of these weapons turned against their creators, brother fighting brother with implements designed to kill the emperor's enemies, now killing the emperor's sons. By the 41st millennium, many of the most powerful weapons are relics, irreplaceable artifacts from a more enlightened age, maintained through ritual and prayer as much as through understanding. This technological regression is central to what makes 40k's weapons so brutal. If the Imperium fully understood the plasma weapons it uses, they could make them safe. If the Adeptus Mechanicus could recreate the technologies from the Dark Age, they could build weapons more effective than anything currently in service. But they can't, because knowledge has been lost, because the institutions that preserve technical understanding have become religious cults that value tradition over innovation, because 10,000 years of constant warfare have left no time or resources for fundamental research. So the Imperium fights with weapons that kill their users, maintains technologies through prayer rather than understanding, and accepts casualties that a more advanced civilization would find unconscionable. The scale of brutality in 40k's weapons also reflects the scale of threats the Imperium faces. When your enemies include billion-strong swarms of biological horrors that can adapt to any defense, demon legions that can materialize from the warp to slaughter entire worlds, ancient machines that slept for 60 million years and woke with technology that makes yours look primitive, and fungi-derived warriors who get stronger and more dangerous the more of them you kill. When these are your enemies, your weapons need to match the threat. Bolters that blow enemies apart from the inside make sense when you're fighting orcs who can survive losing limbs or being partially disemboweled. Flamers that reduce everything in their path to burning ash make sense when you're purging Tyranid infestations or chaos corruption. Exterminatus makes sense when the alternative is allowing a chaos-corrupted world to become a permanent cancer, spreading taint to neighboring systems. The personal cost of wielding these weapons rarely gets discussed, but deserves examination. Space Marines, who spend centuries in combat, using chainswords and bolters to kill in the Emperor's name, become fundamentally changed by the experience. The psychological weight of killing constantly, of watching battle brothers die, of seeing the horrors that humanity's enemies bring to the battlefield. This creates warriors who are as much weapons as the implements they carry. The human cost of maintaining the Imperium's military might isn't just measured in bodies, but in souls. In the warriors who become so brutalized by constant warfare that they struggle to be anything other than killers. Imperial Guard plasma gunners live with constant fear that their weapon will kill them. Sisters of battle carrying flamers know they're becoming instruments of purification through fire, their personalities subsumed into their role as bringers of the Emperor's burning judgment. Tank crews operating weapons powerful enough to level city blocks, grapple with the scale of destruction they can unleash with a trigger pull. The psychological burden of wielding these weapons of mass death is enormous, and the Imperium provides little support for those who struggle with it. You carry your burden, you do your duty, and if the weight breaks you, there are always more soldiers to take your place. The enemy forces face similar psychological challenges. Chaos Space Marines, wielding demon weapons, must constantly fight against the corruption of the blade they carry, knowing that one moment of weakness will see them enslaved to the demon within. Dark Eldar warriors, using weapons designed to maximize suffering, must confront what it says about them that they've dedicated their existence to inflicting pain. Even the seemingly mindless Tyranids carry the psychological weight of the hive mind, their individual experiences and deaths feeding back into the collective consciousness, creating a species-wide understanding of warfare and death that humans can barely comprehend. The aesthetic brutality of 40k's weapons deserves note as well. These aren't sleek, streamlined implements of clinical efficiency, they're deliberately brutal in appearance. Chainswords are designed to look intimidating, all spinning teeth and aggressive angles. Bolters are bulky and imposing, weapons that look like they could kill you, even without ammunition. Even the more sophisticated weapons like power swords often feature skulls, imperial aquillas, religious iconography, purity seals, and other decorations that emphasize their role as instruments of divine judgment. The weapons are designed to inspire fear and awe in equal measure, to serve as psychological weapons before they ever fire a shot or swing a blow. This aesthetic brutality extends to the larger weapons and war machines as well. Titans aren't just powerful combat platforms, they're cathedral ships, walking churches bristling with weapons and covered in religious iconography. Space Marine vehicles feature brutal angles, reinforced armor plating covered in kill markings and chapter symbols, hulls decorated with chained skulls and oath papers. The Death Guard's corrupted tanks drip with disease and decay, covered in pustules and rotting flesh. Every weapon system, from the personal to the apocalyptic, is designed to make a statement about its nature and purpose. The irony is that for all their brutality, for all the horror they represent, these weapons are necessary. Not just necessary for the factions that wield them, but necessary for the setting itself. Warhammer 40k is defined by its grimdark aesthetic, by the brutality of its warfare, by the sense that this is a universe where everything is terrible and getting worse. The weapons are perfectly calibrated to maintain that tone, to create battles that are visceral and horrible, and yet somehow heroic, to show us characters fighting impossible odds with implements of terrible power, holding back the darkness through force of will and application of overwhelming violence. Without the bolters that blow enemies apart, without the chainswords that tear through armor and flesh, without the plasma weapons that vaporize targets while threatening their users, without the Exterminatus weapons that can end worlds, without these elements, 40k would be a different setting. The brutality isn't gratuitous. It's essential to creating the atmosphere of desperate struggle against overwhelming odds that defines the setting. Every weapon tells a story about the faction that uses it, the enemies they face, and the costs they're willing to pay for survival. Conclusion: the arsenal of the apocalypse. We've journeyed through the weapons of Warhammer 40,000, from the personal brutality of chainswords tearing through flesh, to the cosmic horror of weapons that manipulate stars and crack planets. We've examined implements designed to kill individuals and weapons designed to end civilizations. We've seen how each faction's arsenal reflects their philosophy, their capabilities, and their desperation. And through it all, we've witnessed the brutal reality of the 41st millennium, where war is not just constant, but increasingly desperate, where survival requires weapons that can kill on scales ranging from the personal to the planetary. The chainsword remains iconic, that perfect synthesis of brutal effectiveness and grim aesthetics that captures everything about Space Marine warfare in a single weapon. The bolter continues to roar across battlefields, Each detonation, a reminder that in the future, even standard infantry weapons fire miniature missiles designed to explode inside their targets. Plasma weapons burn with fusion-level heat while threatening to immolate their wielders. A perfect metaphor for the Imperium's desperate use of technologies it no longer understands. Melta weapons reduce armor and flesh to superheated vapor through sheer application of thermal energy. Flamers turn battlefields into infernos where the Emperor's enemies burn for their transgressions. Power weapons disrupt matter at the molecular level, allowing skilled warriors to cut through nearly anything. Exotic xenos weapons demonstrate that humanity doesn't have a monopoly on horrifying ways to kill, that the galaxy contains species with weapons that operate on principles human science barely comprehends. Exterminatus weapons remind us that in this dark future, sometimes the only way to win is to ensure nobody wins, reducing contested worlds to lifeless rock rather than allowing them to fall to the enemy. And the apocalyptic arsenal of reality-breaking weapons shows us that at the highest levels of power, the very laws of physics become negotiable, stars become weapons, and entire systems can be unmade. Each weapon we've examined tells part of the larger story of Warhammer 40,000. Together, they paint a picture of a galaxy at war, civilizations locked in endless conflict, species fighting for survival with every tool at their disposal. The brutality isn't just aesthetic choice or grimdark window dressing. It's fundamental to understanding what makes this setting work, why it resonates, why people are drawn to explore a future this dark and violent. The weapons of the 41st millennium are brutal because they must be. The enemies are too numerous, too powerful, too diverse for conventional solutions. When you're facing opponents who can adapt to any threat, who can come back from the dead, who can corrupt through mere exposure, who view your entire civilization as nothing more than raw material to be consumed. When these are your enemies, your weapons need to match the threat. They need to be brutal enough, powerful enough, devastating enough to give you a fighting chance against the darkness. But perhaps the most brutal thing about these weapons isn't what they do to enemies. It's what they do to those who wield them. The Space Marine who's spent centuries killing with chainsword and bolter, who's seen thousands of enemies torn apart, who's watched battle brothers fall despite their weapons and armor. The Imperial Guard plasma gunner, who knows that every shot might be the one that overheats and cooks them alive inside their flak armor. The Sister of Battle, who purges the heretic with cleansing flame, knowing that she's becoming defined by her role as an instrument of destruction. The Inquisitor, who orders Exterminatus, condemning billions to death to save trillions from corruption. These weapons brutalize not just bodies but souls. They create warriors who know nothing but war, civilizations that exist only to wage war, entire species defined by their capacity for violence. In the grim darkness of the far future, the weapons you wield shape who you become. And when your weapons are designed to tear, burn, dissolve, and obliterate, when your arsenal contains implements of devastation ranging from the personal to the cosmic, when your military doctrine accepts casualties that would horrify any sane civilization, well, what does that make you? The Imperium would say it makes you strong. It makes you worthy of survival in a hostile galaxy. It makes you capable of standing against threats that would destroy softer civilizations in moments. And perhaps they're right. Perhaps in a universe this brutal, this hostile, this fundamentally hostile to human existence, only those willing to embrace brutality in their weapons and warfare can survive. Perhaps the alternative to the Imperium's brutal arsenal isn't peace or enlightenment, but simply extinction, being consumed by threats that respect nothing but power. Or perhaps the real brutality is that the Imperium has convinced itself this is true, that 10,000 years of constant warfare have created a civilization that literally cannot imagine any other way of existing, that the weapons have become so central to their identity that they've forgotten what it would mean to put them down, to seek solutions that don't involve blowing enemies apart with mass reactive rounds, or burning them alive with promethium, or reducing entire worlds to sterile rock. As we finish this exploration of the most brutal weapons in Warhammer 40k, we're left with questions as much as answers. What does it mean to live in a universe where such weapons are necessary? What happens to civilizations that spend millennia perfecting ways to kill? Is there any path forward that doesn't involve endless war and increasingly devastating weapons? Or is the setting's tagline correct? In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and all these weapons are simply necessary tools for survival in that eternal conflict. These are questions that Warhammer 40k poses, but deliberately leaves unanswered. The brutality is the point, the weapons are the means, and whether it's a chainsword tearing through flesh or a celestial orrery manipulating stars, every weapon in the setting exists to show us that this is a future where violence is not just common but necessary, where survival requires brutality, where the price of existence is measured in the bodies of your enemies and sometimes your friends. The weapons of Warhammer 40,000 are brutal because the universe they exist in is brutal. They're devastating because anything less devastating wouldn't be sufficient. They're horrible because the alternative to their horror is extinction. And they're fascinating because they show us, in visceral detail, what warfare might look like in a future where humanity has spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing and still finds itself struggling to survive against threats that dwarf anything we can currently imagine. In the end, that's what makes these weapons so compelling and so terrifying. They're not fantasy. Within the context of the 40k universe, they're rational responses to real threats, practical solutions to existential problems. A civilization that carries chainswords and bolters into battle isn't being dramatic or excessive. They're bringing the minimum firepower necessary to have a chance against enemies who would slaughter them otherwise. A species that maintains Exterminatus weapons isn't being cruel. They're keeping the ultimate sanction available for when the alternative is allowing corruption or invasion to spread beyond control. An empire that uses flamers to purge the heretic isn't being brutal for brutality's sake. They're using fire to cleanse threats that conventional weapons cannot address. The weapons of Warhammer 40k are brutal. They're horrifying. They're devastating. They're necessary. And they're a perfect reflection of the dark future they exist to defend. A future where there is only war, and the weapons we carry define not just how we fight, but who we are. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the brutal arsenal of the 41st millennium, please like and subscribe. There's always more to explore in the grim darkness of the far future. More weapons to examine, more tactics to discuss, more horror to uncover. Until next time, remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and war needs weapons. Brutal, devastating, necessary weapons.